Chapter 1891. The six half-step to creation realm experts had sealed off the exit of the Golden Embryo secret realm. Perhaps it was because Murong-Yu had disappeared into thin air, but the six half-step ancestors' divine senses had covered the entire area. Not to mention a person or a beast, even a tiny particle passing by would be carefully inspected. This was what Murong-Yu discovered after observing for a few days. This made him very depressed. Do these half-step to creation realm ancestors have nothing better to do? Murong-Yu cursed in his heart with a gloomy face. In fact, what Murong-Yu did not know was that these ancestors did not have nothing better to do. They did so because of their hatred for Murong-Yu and their greed for the demonic vine. After the demoness had obtained the Heaven's Inquisition divine vine, she had already disappeared. According to the six half-step ancestors' estimates, the demoness had most likely left Tianwu world to break through to a higher level on the primordial star. Given the demoness' hatred for them, would she come back after breaking through to the creation realm? At that time, none of them would be a match for the demoness. Only after obtaining the demonic vine and finding a way to cultivate it to the creation realm could they fight against the demoness. Therefore, they were guarding this place to death. However, as time passed, the six half-step ancestors began to suspect that Murong-Yu had already left the Golden Embryo secret realm. After all, Murong-Yu was too mysterious. He had disappeared into thin air. Moreover, they had thoroughly investigated Murong-Yu's background over the past few days, but they had not found anything. Could that brat be hiding in the Golden Embryo secret realm and waiting for the demoness to come and save him? The half-step to creation realm ancestor of the world dominators said with a gloomy face. The other 5 half-step ancestors' faces instantly darkened. This was very likely. However, the demoness would not be able to break through to the creation realm in a short period of time. Even with the Heaven's Inquisition divine vine, it only increased the chances by 30%. Whether or not she could break through was still a problem. Murong-Yu was only a level 3 chaotic realm. He might have been killed in the Golden Embryo secret realm. Should we go in and search again? Mystic Island's ancestor looked at the other 5. Although they had already checked the entire Golden Embryo secret realm thoroughly, they did not find anything. Murong-Yu's concealment ability was too terrifying. Even if they went in, they wouldn't be able to find anything. However, they now hoped that Murong-Yu had already been killed by those beasts in the Golden Embryo secret realm. That way, the demonic vine would no longer recognize its master and return to its ownerless state. What if Murong-Yu has been lurking near the exit? Once we enter, he will take the opportunity to rush out. The twin polarity sex ancestor pondered for a moment before speaking. The other patriarchs fell silent as well. No matter what, I have to go in again. The mysterious island's ancestor harumphed coldly and charged into the Golden Embryo secret realm. The expressions of the other patriarchs changed slightly. Some people didn't want to enter the Golden Embryo secret realm, but the ancestor of the mystic ice island went in. What if he obtained the devil vine and took it for himself? They would not allow such a thing to happen. Therefore, the remaining 5 patriarchs also charged into the Golden Embryo secret realm. However, their immense divine senses still covered the exit. Murong-Yu couldn't help but be startled when he sensed the 5 enormous divine senses above him. Because he was at the edge of the area covered by the patriarch's divine sense, the patriarchs only casually scanned him with their divine sense when they passed by. Naturally, I didn't notice the He-Tu and the Luo Shu that had turned into particles. This is a good opportunity. Murong-Yu was secretly overjoyed. Although the exit was still covered by their divine senses, once he touched it, he would be discovered. This was definitely the best opportunity to rush out of the Golden Embryo secret realm. Otherwise, Murong-Yu would be trapped in the Golden Embryo secret realm for the rest of his life. However, Murong-Yu did not leave immediately. Instead, he hid himself. The patriarchs were still relatively close to him. Once they discovered him, they would most likely rush back before Murong-Yu could escape. By then, Murong-Yu would be in deep trouble. After waiting for a day, Murong-Yu finally walked out of He-Tu Luo Shu. He guessed that the patriarchs had already left. Now is the time. Murong took a deep breath. First, he glanced at the immense divine senses that covered the entire heaven and earth. Then he took a step forward. Using the army formula, Murong boosted himself with the space and time rules of order. Then, he shuttled through the void and rushed toward the exit of the Golden Embryo secret realm. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Murong's entire body violently slammed into the six ancestors' interweaving divine senses. After an earth-shattering explosion, Murong felt six incomparably frightening energies surging towards him like a torrent. Before he could even react, the energies had already bombarded him. Murong was shocked. He immediately took out the Hichu Luoshu and the weapon fragments to block in front of him. It was also at this moment that the six incomparably terrifying forces had already blasted over. Poof! Murong felt as if he had been smashed by an incomparably huge ancient mountain. All the bones in his body were instantly shattered into powder. His physical body was almost shattered into powder. His physical body had already reached the level of a rebirth state origin weapon. However, under the bombardment of such terrifying forces, it could not withstand a single blow. One could imagine how terrifying the power contained in the divine senses was. A large mouthful of blood mixed with pieces of internal organs spurted out. Murong's figure rapidly retreated. Seeing that Murong was retreating, the six forces seemed to have locked onto Murong and bombarded him. However, Murong's speed was not bad. With a few swings of his body, he had already retreated hundreds of millions of miles away. The six forces were still chasing after him, but their power was more or less depleted. They were not as terrifying as before. At this moment, the tree of life in Murong's body trembled violently. An incomparably vast amount of life force gushed out and frantically cleansed Murong's body. In just a few moments, the injuries on Murong's physical body had been healed. Explode! Murong's fury soared to the heavens. With a roar, the weapon fragment exploded with a frightening aura capable of destroying the heavens and earth. Then, it rapidly shot towards the six incoming attacks. Boom! 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 When one of the forces was slashed, one of them trembled slightly, but did not shatter. It only weakened a little. However, it did not matter. Murong could attack more than once. In an instant, Murong slashed more than 1,000,000 times. Finally, under his incomparably violent bombardment, the six forces were all shattered by him. However, there was no joy on Murong's face. On the contrary, there was a look of worry. This was because he knew that he had triggered the divine sense of the six great ancestors. The six great ancestors must have been alerted and would definitely rush over as soon as possible. That's right. When Murong collided with the divine sense of the six great ancestors, the six great ancestors who were in the depths of the Golden Embryo secret realm immediately reacted. Someone is attacking our spiritual will, and it's coming from the Golden Embryo secret realm. Oh no, it must be that little bastard. The Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor roared, then turned around and shot toward the exit. His speed was more than 10 times faster than before. The other patriarchs also silently turned around and rushed out. Murong once again came to the front, covered by the divine sense. Looking at the divine sense, his eyes flashed with a terrifying light. Those ancestors left behind their divine senses. Because they are far away, these divine senses can only erupt with the strength of the early Bright World realm. If my physical body hadn't broken through to the rebirth realm and my strength wasn't strong enough, I'm afraid I would have been killed just now. These divine senses aren't indestructible. I just need to attack from a distance and slowly exhaust their strength. However, I only have 2 hours. I'm afraid those 6 old fellows will be back in 2 hours. Murong's eyes flashed violently, and he had already controlled the weapon fragments to attack madly. Boom! The divine sense of the 6 forces rushed over again and ruthlessly strangled the weapon fragments. Murong's figure quickly retreated. During this process, the weapon fragments madly attacked. Murong Yu's hands weren't idle either. The 9 syllables of truth was continuously sent out by him as he crazily bombarded his opponents. Because of the experience, the divine sense's power couldn't directly attack Murong Yu's body. However, Murong Yu's attacks didn't stop. Therefore, the divine sense's power was constantly being weakened. 1%, 2%, 10%. The divine sense was getting weaker and weaker. When the divine sense's power was weakened to 50%, half an hour had already passed. Murong Yu's heart was in his mouth. An extremely strong sense of danger shrouded his heart. Moreover, as time passed, the sense of danger grew stronger and stronger. He could even feel the aura of the 6 great ancestors rushing back quickly. If this continued, the great ancestors would probably rush back before Murong Yu could destroy the divine sense. Little brat, attack. Although Murong Yu was unwilling to use the demonic vine, it was already a matter of life and death. As Murong Yu's alternative pet, the demonic vine naturally knew that Murong Yu was in a critical situation. Therefore, as soon as it appeared, it exploded with billions of vines and madly attacked with terrifying power. Although the demonic vine's realm had been reduced to the chaotic realm, it couldn't stop its vines. One attack was equivalent to billions of attacks. It was even more effective than Murong Yu. Therefore, the speed at which the divine sense was being weakened increased. Soon, the divine sense was weakened to only 20% of its previous level. Quick, speed up. However, Murong Yu didn't relax. Instead, his expression became more serious, and the speed of his attacks increased. Chapter 1892. Under Murong Yu's attacks, the power of the divine consciousness was constantly being weakened. However, Murong Yu's expression did not relax. On the contrary, it became more and more solemn. This was because the sense of danger in his heart was getting stronger. The 6 old ancestors must be on their way back, and it wouldn't take long for them to return. As long as the power of the divine consciousness is weakened to 1/10 of its original level, I will be able to rush over. Break for me. Murong Yu roared in his heart as his attacks grew fiercer and fiercer. Swoosh! Swoosh! Right at that moment, 6 black figures suddenly appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. Furthermore, they were smashing through the void at a frightening speed as they shot towards him. The 6 half-step to blessed realm ancestors had finally arrived. Murong Yu was shocked. However, he did not panic. Instead, he increased his strength and continued to attack the divine consciousness in front of him. Little bastard, let's see where you can run to. A sinister voice was heard. Then, a large hand traversed the sky and grabbed down with a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth. At that moment, all the hair on Murong Yu's body stood on end. The sense of danger in his heart was raised to the extreme. However, Murong Yu did not hurry. Instead, he continued to attack the divine consciousness in a frenzy. 13%. Hurry! Hurry up and break! Murong Yu roared in a frenzy. At that moment, the large hand had already grabbed down. Just as the large hand was about to grab Murong Yu, the other 5 half-step to blessed realm ancestors attacked. Bang! A large hand slapped the large hand formed by the power of the first ancestor and sent it flying. The mysterious island ancestor was instantly enraged. However, he did not say anything. Instead, he grabbed at Murong Yu again. Murong Yu had the devil's vine on him. If one of them managed to grab Murong Yu, they could take the devil's vine and leave immediately. There was not much difference in strength between the 6 of them. Even if 5 of them could defeat one of them, it would be extremely difficult to kill him. Therefore, the 6 of them would definitely not let anyone else capture Murong Yu. They could only control Murong Yu together and then discuss who the devil's vine would belong to. Boom! Because of this, the 6 ancestors attacked again and attacked each other. The giant hands exploded one after another, but they were controlled to only explode within a certain range. Otherwise, Murong Yu would have been shaken to death. They could not guarantee that the devil's vine would not be killed. Kid, hand over the devil's vine or die. The world dominator's ancestor looked at Murong Yu as murderous. If not for this kid's heaven's vine, the devil's vine. At this moment, Murong Yu was enduring the terrifying pressure. Although the six ancestors' attacks attack, however, the invisible aura of six half-step blessed realm patriarchs was enough to kill him. As a result, Murong Yu felt as if all the bones in his body were about to shatter under their pressure. However, Murong Yu did not say a word and continued to attack the net of divine consciousness. Kneel down. Seeing that Murong Yu did not care about them, the six ancestors were furious. The Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor roared. An extremely terrifying pressure descended from the sky like a stormy sea, directly suppressing Murong Yu. Boom! Crack, crack! Murong Yu's body abruptly came to a stop, but he still stood straight. However, a series of cracking sounds came from his body. It was extremely terrifying. This was because his bones were being crushed inch by inch. Endless pain rushed madly into Murong Yu's mind, almost causing him to faint. However, Murong Yu's expression remained firm as he stood in his original spot. He had experienced this kind of pain countless times, so he was not afraid of it. If these people wanted to use force to force him to kneel, he would definitely not kneel. Even if he died, he would not kneel. Therefore, although his face was pale, his eyes were filled with determination. The depths of his eyes were filled with hatred that soared to the sky. You six old farts only know how to bully the weak. Is this all you've got? Is this the ability of a half-step to the blessed realm? Murong Yu was furious and could not help but mock them. The six ancestors' faces immediately darkened. The Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor's face was even darker. Was it because Murong Yu hadn't knelt under his pressure? Was this not a slap to his face? Boom! An even more terrifying pressure came crashing down. Boom! Crack, crack! At this moment, all the bones in Murong Yu's body were crushed. Even his physical body was crushed into a pile of mud. Without bones, his flesh was crushed into a pile of mud. Naturally, he could not stand. However, Murong Yu remained standing. Although his body could not stand straight, he did not kneel. He would kneel to the heavens, the earth, and his parents. It was impossible for these people to make him kneel. Good boy, you're not bad. The Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor laughed in anger. However, although he said that Murong Yu was not bad, his voice was cold and murderous. How could he say that Murong Yu was not bad? The other five ancestors glanced at the Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor with disdain. This guy was an absolute powerhouse at the half-step to the blessed realm, but he could not do anything to Murong Yu. Feeling the other five's disdain, the Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor's heart was filled with anger. His desire to kill Murong Yu grew even stronger. Bang! The Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor attacked again. A slap landed on Murong Yu's body that had already turned into a pile of mud. Under the impact of the terrifying power, Murong Yu could not block it at all. His entire body fell to the ground and was slammed deep into the ground. Old bastard, you better not let me escape today. Otherwise, I'll kill you myself. Murong Yu roared with a murderous aura. Although it was only the Black Tortoise Tower's ancestor who attacked, the other five ancestors were not good people either. Therefore, these six people were people that Murong Yu had to kill. Once he had enough strength, it would be the time of death for these six people. Feeling Murong Yu's murderous aura, the six ancestors suddenly felt uneasy. But soon, they began to sneer. Murong Yu would definitely die today. What was there to be afraid of? Why are you saying so much to this little bastard? Just kill him. The devil's vine must be on him. The twin polarity sex ancestor said calmly with a murderous aura. Ha ha! At this moment, Murong Yu laughed loudly. Six old bastards, don't you want the devil's vine? The devil's vine has already recognized me as its master. With a thought, I can completely destroy the devil's vine. Why don't you kill me? I'll make sure that you get nothing. The six ancestors' eyes narrowed slightly. They knew that Murong Yu was speaking the truth. Moreover, even if they could seal and imprison Murong Yu's power, they could not imprison his thoughts. Moreover, even if they could imprison Murong Yu's thoughts, Murong Yu could definitely kill the devil's vine before they could imprison him. Seeing the 6 ancestors hesitate, Murong Yu continued to laugh. 6 old bastards. Do you know who the demonic woman is? A bunch of trash. I'm sure you don't know. Murong Yu continued to laugh coldly. His words caused the 6 ancestors' murderous aura to surge. I'm sure you know that the demonic woman is not from the Tianwu world. She is the holy maiden of the lunar sect. Do you know about the lunar sect? Any disciple from the lunar sect can easily destroy trash like you. The lunar sect's manifestation realm cultivators were everywhere. You 6 old bastards actually dare to kill the holy maiden of the lunar sect? You're dead meat. Murong Yu said coldly. His words caused the 6 ancestors' murderous aura to surge. A trace of fear appeared in their eyes. As the 6 ancestors of the Tianwu world, they naturally knew about the existence of the lunar sect. That was a colossus in the solar system. Destroying small planets like theirs would be as easy as blowing off dust. If the demonic woman was really the holy maiden of the lunar sect, they would definitely die. Seeing the fear in the 6 ancestors' eyes, Murong Yu laughed coldly in his heart. In reality, he did not know whether the demonic woman was the holy maiden of the lunar sect. In fact, he did not even know if the lunar sect had a holy maiden. However, he had no other choice now. These 6 old bastards were too strong. He could only use the lunar sect to suppress them. I'll tell you another secret. Murong Yu continued to laugh coldly. The demonic woman is the holy maiden of the lunar sect. However, this is only one of her identities. However, she has an even more terrifying identity. Do you know what it is? She is the daughter of the sect leader of the lunar sect. She is the successor to the sect leader of the lunar sect. Murong Yu tossed out another bombshell. Although this was only a lie. However, the 6 ancestors did not know whether this was true or not. Moreover, the 6 ancestors all knew about the identities of Murong Yu and the demonic woman. Sure enough, after Murong Yu tossed out this bombshell, the 6 ancestors were instantly stunned. The power that was originally suppressing Murong Yu also fluctuated violently. This was the moment. Murong Yu roared in his heart. His body immediately shot into the air. All of his bones and flesh had been shattered. However, as he spoke, he had already secretly recovered his strength to its peak state. At this moment, although he was still unable to weaken his divine sense to 1/10 of its original strength, Murong Yu could only forcefully break through. The 6 ancestors were dazed for a moment. However, they immediately came to their senses. In their fury, they all moved at the same time. A massive hand directly grabbed at Murong Yu. Time freeze. Time reverse. Spatial shackle. 9 syllables technique. At this moment, Murong Yu unleashed his most powerful attack. All kinds of battle techniques were instantly unleashed. In fact, the demonic vines were also furiously attacking. However, although the regulations of time and the regulations of space were extremely powerful, the gap between Murong Yu and the 6 ancestors was truly too large. As soon as these attacks came into contact, they were directly shattered. However, it was not completely useless. At the very least, it could delay the attacks of the 6 ancestors for a split second. Even if it was only a split second, it was still enough. Chapter 1893. Boom. At this moment, Murong Yu had already slammed into the net-like divine sense. A terrifying force exploded and was about to send Murong Yu flying. Break! Murong Yu roared in his heart. Holding the broken pieces of the weapon in his hand, he charged forward in a frenzy. Although the force was still terrifying, it was beyond what Murong Yu could bear. Rumble. Under Murong Yu's attack, the force quickly dissipated. However, although Murong Yu was charging forward quickly, his speed was not fast. The attacks of the 6 patriarchs tore through the air and were about to suppress him again. Old Man Tianhai. Do you know who emptied the Tianhai sect treasure vault? It's the other 5 people. The 5 of them controlled your obedient grandson and robbed him after emptying the treasure vault. It's ridiculous that you still cooperated with them. At this moment, Murong Yu suddenly sneered. The patriarch of Tianhai sect was instantly enraged. A terrifying force exploded and swept through the other 5 patriarchs as he charged forward in a frenzy. These 5 people's actions were too disgusting. He wanted to kill them. Moreover, they had pretended to ask him why he did not bring the origin artifact of the creation realm. They had already stolen it, and now they were asking? Weren't they mocking him on purpose? Are you crazy? The other 5 patriarchs were shocked and hurriedly retracted their forces to defend themselves. If they did not defend themselves, they might be killed by the frenzied half-step to creation realm expert. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Murong-Yu had already charged into the boundless divine consciousness. Then, with a swoosh, he disappeared from the sight of the 6 patriarchs. He had already been transported out of the Golden Embryo secret realm. Once he left the Golden Embryo secret realm, he would be free to do whatever he wanted. No one could stop Murong-Yu. As long as he entered the Hichu Luo Shu, even if the 6 patriarchs were creation realm patriarchs, they would not be able to do anything to him. Shameless, Tianhai was infuriated. He erupted with a terrifying power and crazily attacked. The other 5 ancestors were enraged, while the divine sect ancestor angrily roared, "Old man Tianhai, if we did it, how did that little bastard know? Now I suspect that it was that little bastard who stole it. Even if it's not the little bastard, it's definitely related to him. Maybe it's that witch." The patriarch of the Sky Sea sect was taken aback. That's right, if these 5 people did it, how would the little bastard know? Oh no, he had been tricked. Ancestor Tianhai abruptly reacted and rushed out in a flash. However, where was Murong-Yu's shadow? "Old man Amami, what do you say?" The other 5 old ancestors also came out, but they couldn't find any signs of Murong-Yu leaving. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Thus, the 5 of them looked at Tianhai with unfriendly expressions. If not for Ancestor Tianhai, they would have captured Murong-Yu long ago. Ancestor Tianhai was about to vomit blood. Because of Murong-Yu, they only glanced at the heavens inquiring God vine and the demonic vine. In fact, Murong-Yu even emptied the treasury of the Sky Sea sect. The entire world will hunt down Murong-Yu. Ancestor Tianhai shouted coldly with a dark expression. Then he quickly left. Although the other patriarchs were unwilling, they had no choice but to leave. They couldn't kill Ancestor Tianhai, right? Even if they wanted to, Ancestor Tianhai wasn't that easy to kill. Thus, they could only leave the Golden Embryo secret realm unhappily. However, Murong-Yu's words made them unable to calm down. Her identity as a demonic woman and a lunar sect were like a series of incomparably heavy mountains weighing down on their shoulders, making it difficult for them to breathe. However, this had nothing to do with Murong-Yu. After Murong-Yu left the Golden Embryo secret realm, he used the Hichu Luo Shu to teleport away from the Golden Embryo secret realm. This way, even if the 6 half-step to creation realm ancestors were extremely powerful, they wouldn't be able to find him. Those 6 old bastards. Murong-Yu's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He swore that as soon as his strength increased, he would definitely kill the 6 of them. Of course, the prerequisite was that the witch didn't come back and kill them. Thinking about the witch, Murong-Yu couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. When he threw the heavens inquiring God vine to the witch, he only wanted her to lure the 6 ancestors away so that he could successfully subdue the demonic vine. However, the witch didn't look back. "This witch almost killed me. If I meet her, I will definitely give her a good spanking." Murong-Yu's heart skipped a beat. In a flash, he appeared beside Zhao Jiqing and the others. Zhao Jiqing and the others had always been in the Hichu Luo Shu. This was also the reason why Murong-Yu was unwilling to surrender. Once he was killed or surrendered, the Hichu Luo Shu would be snatched away. Then, Zhao Jiqing and the others would fall into the hands of his enemies. At that time, they would definitely die. In the following time, Murong-Yu didn't leave the Hichu Luo Shu. Instead, he accompanied Zhao Jiqing and the others while slowly recovering his strength. Originally, Murong-Yu planned to find a strong primordial star to settle down Zhao Jiqing and the others. After all, it was too dangerous to follow him. A weak primordial star would have too many restrictions and their future achievements wouldn't be high. Originally, Zhao Jiqing and the others could settle down in Heaven Martial World's Trinity Star. However, now that Murong Yu had offended the six old ancestors, he didn't dare to let Zhao Jiqing and the others settle down in Heaven Martial World. Otherwise, once they were discovered, Murong Yu wouldn't even have time to cry. He could only go to an even stronger primordial star. Murong Yu's ideal place was naturally the lunar sect. However, without the demoness, Murong Yu didn't know how to go to the lunar sect. As for the Heaven Martial World, although the Heaven Martial World was relatively open, not many people knew about the existence of the lunar sect. The six patriarchs definitely knew about it, but would they tell Murong Yu? As long as Murong Yu appeared beside them, he would probably be killed. After resting for a period of time, Murong Yu's soul slowly recovered. Thus, he left the Hichu Luoshu and appeared in the Heaven Martial World. The entire Heaven Martial World was looking for him. Under the control of the various old ancestors, Murong Yu's appearance was known by almost everyone in the Heaven Martial World. Of course, to experts like them, their appearance could be changed at any time. Murong Yu was the same. Thus, it was impossible to arrest someone just based on their appearance, unless he knew which faction the other party was from and capture the other party's people to threaten him. However, the six old ancestors were extremely vicious. Because they were very familiar with Murong Yu's aura, they also publicized Murong Yu's aura. Soul aura. No matter how a person's appearance changed, their soul aura would not change. Because once the soul aura changed, that person's soul would change as well. If that person could change their soul, then that person would be an incomparably powerful soul cultivator. However, there are so many soul cultivators in this world, but how many soul cultivators were there in total? Soul cultivators were rare not only in low-level planets like the Sacred World, but also in the boundless starry sky. These six old bastards are truly vicious. If it was anyone else, no matter how big the Heaven Martial World is, there would be no place for them to stay. In a city, looking at the six great powers' joint arrest warrant, an ordinary-looking youth sneered in his heart. This person was naturally Murong Yu. At this moment, there was a huge difference between his appearance and the original body. He was completely different from the original body. The most shocking thing was that his soul aura had also changed. Murong Yu was a soul cultivator, so changing his soul aura was not difficult for him. Furthermore, he had previously split half of his soul into a clone that was completely different from his original body. Thus, when he found out that he was wanted, Murong Yu completely changed himself. Now, even his closest wives couldn't help but come to him. The six great powers were clearly frightened by Murong Yu's words. They only wanted Murong Yu, but not the demoness. Furthermore, they were very vague about Murong Yu's origins. Murong Yu did not reveal his identity, but he was definitely related to the demoness. Could it be that they did not think that Murong Yu was also a disciple of the lunar sect? Murong Yu had some doubts in his heart. Furthermore, the six old ancestors still dared to kill him after finding out about his relationship with the demoness. Murong Yu only found out about this after a long time. However, what comforted Murong Yu was that, although the six great powers wanted him, they clearly thought that he came down from a high-level origin star. With their strength, it was impossible for them to obtain information from a high-level origin star. Thus, they did not know about Murong Yu's identity. Otherwise, if they continued to investigate and track down to the water cloud planet, Murong Yu's identity would be exposed. At that time, the sacred world would be destroyed by their anger, or they might even use it to threaten Murong Yu. The Sky Martial World is no longer suitable for me to stay in. I can only go to a higher-level origin star. That is my stage. Murong Yu muttered. However, many days later, he became depressed, because he did not know how to go to the lunar sect. There were a few teleportation formations that directly sent him to a higher-level origin star. But Murong Yu was only a level 3 chaotic space realm. He did not even have the qualifications to be teleported. Directly attack? Those teleportation formations were guarded by Bright World Realm old ancestors, and they were all in the headquarters of the six great powers. Unless Murong Yu's brain was fried, he would not dare to barge in. There were many teleportation formations to other origin stars of the same level or even lower-level origin stars. Murong-Yu was qualified to be teleported. However, those origin stars were definitely the same as the Sky Martial World. Just as Murong-Yu was feeling depressed, a piece of news spread throughout the Sky Martial World overnight. As this piece of news spread, it immediately suppressed the popularity of Murong-Yu's arrest. A large sect on a higher-level origin star, the Sun Sect, had come to the Sky Martial World to recruit disciples. Anyone who was in the chaotic space realm or above could participate in the assessment. Once they passed, they would be like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. From then on, they would have a meteoric rise. Chapter 1894. The Sun Sect is recruiting disciples. Murong-Yu was stunned when he heard the news. Others might only know that the Sun Sect was a behemoth on a higher-level planet, but most people in the Tianwu world had never heard of it. That was because their horizons were limited. However, Murong-Yu had learned about the Sun Sect from the Demoness. Moreover, he had obtained the Sun Sect's secret technique from the Sun Sovereign in the Sacred World, the Sun Sutra. Whether it was the Sacred World, the Water Cloud Planet, or the Tianwu world, these planets all existed in the solar system. The solar system was an incomparably huge galaxy with countless planets and spheres. There was even a 4-origin planet. The Tianwu world was very powerful, but it was only a ternary planet. The solar system was a 4-origin planet, and there were terrifying existences at the creation realm. The Sun Sect was the ruler of the solar system. The Sun Sovereign that Murong-Yu had met was the ruler of the solar system, the sect leader of the Sun Sect. This is a little interesting. Murong-Yu suddenly laughed. Originally, he wanted to join the Lunar Sect, but he didn't know how to get there. Since the Sun Sect was recruiting disciples in the Tianwu world, wouldn't it be convenient for Murong-Yu to go there? Although he was going to join the Sun Sect, the Sun Sect seemed to be stronger than the Lunar Sect. Become a disciple of the Sun Sect and join the Sun Sect. Murong-Yu made up his mind and left the place. He began to inquire about the Sun Sect's recruitment. Although he had no connections in the solar system, there was no big tree for him to take shelter in. However, Murong-Yu had walked step by step since he was a mortal. Moreover, after joining the Sun Sect, he would be able to obtain many intangible resources. It was 1,000,000 times better than being a rogue cultivator like Murong-Yu. This was the advantage of being a sect. Otherwise, everyone would be a rogue cultivator. However, the news that Murong-Yu received gave him a headache. This time, the Sun Sect was only recruiting disciples at the Chaos Realm. They didn't want those with low or high cultivation realms. However, this didn't give Murong-Yu a headache. Because he was in the Chaos Realm, he met the requirements. What gave him a headache was that the Sun Sect was only recruiting 100 disciples in the Tianwu world. Moreover, these 100 disciples were not official disciples. Only after becoming one of the 100 would there be more selections after reaching the Sun Sect. This was because the Sun Sect's recruitment was limited to the entire solar system. Regardless of whether it was the 1 Yuan star, 2 Yuan star, 3 Yuan star, or 4 Yuan star, they were all recruiting disciples. In the solar system, there were as many primary planets as there were grains of sand in the Ganges. If each planet were to recruit 100 people, then the final number would be extremely terrifying. Even so, it was said that the Sun Sect did not recruit many disciples. 1 in 100 million? Or 1 in a billion? Those who could enter the Sun Sect were definitely geniuses among geniuses. Moreover, the Chaos Realm had 9 minor realms. Any disciple who had reached the Chaos Realm or below could participate. In other words, regardless of whether one had just broken through to the Chaos Realm or was a half-step Bright World Realm expert, one could participate. Furthermore, they were competing on the same stage. Many people knew that these 100 people would definitely be chosen from peak Chaotic Void Realm and half-step Bright World Realm experts. As for people of other realms, it would be useless even if he went. However, there was still a large number of people who flocked over. Think about it. Even if they did not make it in the end, if they shone brightly in the competition, wouldn't it attract the attention of the major powers? Which major powers would they be able to enter in the end? To many people, the solar system was still too far away. Being able to enter the top powers of the Tianwu world was already enough for them. The selection would be held a month later, and the location was the largest city in the Tianwu world, Tianwu City. Tianwu City was a city jointly controlled by the six major powers. It was located in the center of the Tianwu world and was incomparably prosperous, surpassing any other city in the Tianwu world. Murongyu rushed to Tianwu City without hesitation. He had to enter the top 100 in this election. Qingfeng City was one of the largest cities in the Tianwu world. It was located in the west of Tianwu City. Normally, Qingfeng City was very prosperous. Although it could not be compared to Tianwu City, it was still one of the few in the Tianwu world. This was because if one wanted to go to Tianwu City from the west of the Tianwu world, they had to pass through Qingfeng City first. This was because Qingfeng City had a large number of teleportation formations from the west of the Tianwu world. There were not many teleportation formations that directly sent people to Tianwu City. This was a rule set by the six major powers, and no one knew why. Apart from Qingfeng City, there was a similar city in the east, south, and north of Tianwu City. At this time, Murongyu was in a restaurant in Qingfeng City. When he was still a cultivator, he could already abstain from eating. However, there was no cultivator in the world who could really abstain from eating. After all, in the free time of cultivation, eating good food and drinking good wine was also a kind of enjoyment. Because there was still some time before the selection, Murongyu went to the best restaurant in Qingfeng City, Qingfeng Restaurant, to try the food. Furthermore, he could also inquire about a lot of information in the restaurant. Murongyu did not go to the private room on the second floor. Instead, he casually found a seat on the first floor. There were many people here, and it was the best place to inquire about information. Hey, do you know who is most likely to be selected for the Sun Sect's disciple selection this time? A middle-aged man sitting at a table beside Murongyu suddenly asked his companion. Nonsense, of course it's the six heavenly kings, District 4's top 8, and Tianwu's 36 science. His companion looked at him with disdain. His companion angrily glared at him. The six heavenly kings, District 4's top 8, and Tianwu's 36 ions will definitely pass. What I mean is, other than them, who else can pass? Murongyu's heart skipped a beat, and he listened attentively. The six heavenly kings are the four strongest people in the younger generation of the six major powers. It is said that they are half-step into the manifestation realm. It is even said that they can break through to the bright world realm. However, they are just suppressing their cultivation. There is no doubt that the six of them will enter the top 100. As for District 4's top 8, it is said that they are half-step into the bright world realm. They are the 8 strongest experts after the 6 heavenly kings. There are 4 districts in the east, west, north, and south, and there are exactly 2 of them in each district. There should be no suspense for them to pass. As for Tianwu's 36 scions, they are relatively weaker compared to the 6 heavenly kings in District 4's top 8. However, they are definitely the most outstanding disciples in the younger generation of the Tianwu world. There should be no suspense for them to enter the top 100. Someone slowly analyzed, but it allowed Murongyu to understand the 6 heavenly kings, District 4's top 8, and Tianwu's 36 scions. Just the 6 heavenly kings, District 4's top 8, and Tianwu's 36 scions already occupy half of the spots. The other countless disciples can only fight for the remaining 50 spots. It's too cruel. Someone sighed. However, some people were not convinced. Could it be that the Tianwu world is so big, and there are so many cultivators, but there is no one in the younger generation who is stronger than the 6 heavenly kings, District 4's top 8, and Tianwu's 36 scions? Hearing that, the people beside him sneered. Not to mention that the 6 heavenly kings were the top geniuses nurtured by the 6 major powers in the Tianwu world. Even the District 4's top 8, although they were not nurtured by the 6 major powers, had a huge power behind them, which power was not second only to the 6 major powers. And the Tianwu's 36 scions' origins were not simple. They were the top experts nurtured by the 36 major powers. Although their powers were far inferior to the 6 major powers, they were only second to the District 4's top 8. And these 50 powers were the 50 strongest powers in the Tianwu world. They were the top geniuses nurtured by them. What could the others use to compete? Talent or resources? All the benefits had already been taken by the 50 powers. Even if there were people stronger than the Tianwu's 36 science, without sufficient cultivation techniques and resources, their achievements would definitely not be able to compare to the Tianwu's 36 science. This was the benefit of having a power. Perhaps the disciples selected this time are all from the 50 forces, someone said with a sigh. How could the strongest powers in the Tianwu world nurture a genius from each of them? It's just that the 6 heavenly kings, District 4's top 8, and other disciples were the best among them. In any case, I don't have extravagant hopes of entering the 100 spots. I just want to get into the top 10,000 and be noticed by some big power. Joining any of the 50 major powers is also my lifelong dream. Someone laughed mischievously. Listening to the discussions of the crowd, Muronyu already had a preliminary understanding of these famous people. However, although these people's realms were higher than his, Muronyu was still filled with confidence. He had an invincible heart. Invincible in the same realm, it was not just invincible in a small realm, it was invincible in a large realm. Although the life and death battles did not increase Muronyu's strength, his battle prowess was steadily increasing. Moreover, he did not want to fight for first place, he only needed to appear. Suddenly, the crowd clamored. Hey, aren't those the Tianwu's 36 scions, Tianbao, Tianqiatzi? Suddenly, an incomparably loud cry came from the crowd. Uft. Hearing this cry, Muronyu could not help but spit. Tianbao, Tianqiatzi, and Tianqiatzi, aren't they 3 of the 36 constellations? Could it be that the so-called Tianwu's 36 signs were named after the 36 constellations of the heavenly spirits? How arrogant! They actually dared to name themselves after the 36 heavenly spirits. After spitting, Muronyu said with disdain. He was not looking down on the Tianwu's 36 scions, but he felt that they were too arrogant. Bang! Before Muronyu's voice fell, a black-faced youth beside him slapped the table fiercely. At the same time, he looked at Muronyu with killing intent. Brat, what did you say? You dare to slander and look down on the Tianwu's 36 scions? Chapter 1895. Muronyu was stunned as he looked at the black-faced youth who had slammed the table and stood up. What was going on? Muronyu looked at him in confusion. Brat, are you looking down on the 36 Tianwu scions? Who do you think you are? Seeing Muronyu look over, the black-faced youth roared with killing intent. Because of the black-faced youth's roar, everyone in the hall looked over. The majority of them had angry looks on their faces as they glared at Muronyu. Muronyu had actually angered everyone. This made him very stunned. After a long time, he finally reacted. Whether it was the 6 heavenly kings, the top 8 of the 4th district, or the 36 Tianwu scions, they all had a lot of worshippers in the Tianwu world. Of course, these worshippers were not believers and would not bring the power of faith to the 6 heavenly kings. However, these people blindly worshipped the 6 heavenly kings. As the saying goes, they were die-hard fans. They madly worshipped the 6 heavenly kings. In their hearts, the 6 heavenly kings were perfect, the strongest, and could not be slandered by others. Obviously, this black-faced youth was a die-hard fan of the 36 Tianwu scions. In Muronyu's words, just now were something they could not tolerate. Therefore, he slammed the table and stood up. Seeing everyone in the hall looking at him with killing intent, Muronyu's face turned slightly gloomy. There was no lack of high-level chaotic void realm experts among these people, but Muronyu was not afraid. He just did not want to cause trouble. A mere rank 3 chaotic void realm, an ant-like thing, dares to slander the 36 Tianwu scions? You deserve to die. A mean-looking woman sneered at Muronyu, her words sharp and unkind. Trash, kneel down and apologize to us, and cripple your own cultivation. A middle-aged man looked at Muronyu with killing intent, his face full of disdain. Kneel down and apologize? and cripple your own cultivation." Immediately, someone echoed. Then the diehard fans in the hall all shouted. The terrifying aura surged towards Muronyu like a torrent. If it were any other stage 3 Chaos Realm cultivator, they would have been scared to death by this scene. However, Muronyu's expression was only a little gloomy. He simply ignored these people. In his eyes, these diehard fans were nothing. They were just a pile of trash. "Little bastard, since you don't want to kneel down and apologize, I'll make you kneel down and apologize." The black-faced youth from before walked towards Muronyu with a murderous look on his face. As he approached Muronyu, he had already sent a palm strike towards Muronyu. Muronyu frowned slightly, and a cold, killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. The black-faced youth was a level 4 Chaotic Void Realm expert, so he was much stronger than a level 3 Chaotic Void Realm expert. If Muronyu was really only a level 3 Chaotic Space Realm expert, his head would have been smashed into pieces by the other party's palm. This guy actually wanted to kill Muronyu? Muronyu had nothing to do with him at all. He had only said one sentence. More importantly, that sentence had nothing to do with the black-faced youth. "If you continue, you'll definitely die," Muronyu said coldly without even looking at him. Hearing Muronyu's words, the black-faced youth only laughed sinisterly. Not only did his hand not stop, but it also sped up, and the power it contained became even more terrifying. A murderous look flashed across Muronyu's heart. Since this black-faced youth wanted to kill him, then swoosh. Everyone only saw a blur before an incomparably shrill scream erupted from the black-faced youth's mouth, instantly enveloping the entire hall. At this moment, everyone saw that the black-faced youth's hand had suddenly stopped in midair. At the same time, the black-faced youth's hand was pierced by a chopstick. Seeing this scene, everyone had an extremely absurd thought in their minds. The chopstick had nailed the black-faced youth's hand in the void. Nailed in the void. However, very quickly, they shook their heads and sneered. There was nothing attached to the void, so how could it be nailed? It was not that they did not believe it, but it was simply impossible. However, as the person involved, the black-faced youth clearly knew that everyone's guess was not wrong. His hand was indeed nailed in the void. Moreover, what terrified the black-faced youth the most was that the chopstick seemed to contain an extremely terrifying power. No matter how he struggled, it did not move at all. It was as if it had existed in the void since ancient times. Furthermore, waves of intense, piercing pain continuously surged into his mind, stimulating all of his nerves. Even though he was a terrifying existence of level 4 Chaotic Space Realm, he could not help but scream loudly. "Little bastard, you're courting death." A middle-aged man who was at the same table as the black-faced youth was first stunned when he saw this scene. Then he reacted. After roaring loudly, he held a long saber in his hand and slashed at Muronyu's head. Swoosh! However, as soon as his saber slashed out, everyone saw a stream of light shoot past. After that, there was no more after that. A chopstick was trembling in the middle of the middle-aged man's forehead. The middle-aged man was also nailed in the void by Muronyu. Moreover, it seemed to be more serious than the black-faced youth's. This was because the middle-aged man no longer had any aura of life. The middle-aged man was already dead. The surrounding people immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. They did not see how Muronyu attacked at all. The key point was that both of them were level 4 Chaotic Space Realm. They were a small realm higher than Muronyu, but they were killed by Muronyu as if they were ants. Muronyu was definitely not a level 3 Chaotic Space Realm. He must be pretending to be weak. The surrounding people felt a chill in their hearts, but even more people were filled with murderous intent. Muronyu had killed their people. Although they did not know each other before, they were all die-hard fans of the 36 Sky Marshal disciples, so they were a group. Kill this little bastard. No matter how strong he is, he's only one person. He can't block all of our attacks at all. The mean-looking woman who had looked down on Muronyu earlier screamed and attacked first, slashing her sword at Muronyu. At the same time, most of the people in the hall attacked, all of them exploding with their strongest attacks to kill Muronyu. Murong Yu's face darkened. It was really scary to encounter these die-hard fans. However, since these people wanted to kill him, they could all go to hell. Thus, Murong Yu casually grabbed a pair of chopsticks from the table and directly threw them out. Poof, poof, poof. After a series of muffled sounds, the chaotic space realm experts were nailed in the void one after another. In just an instant, more than a dozen people of different realms have been dealt with by Murong Yu. Moreover, Murong Yu did not show any mercy and directly killed them. In other words, these people were all dead. Murong Yu definitely would not show mercy to people who wanted to kill him. Moreover, even if he did not kill these die-hard fans, they would not let him off. Seeing Murong Yu's merciless attack, everyone in the hall was shocked. However, in the next moment, more attacks came at them, as if they were not afraid of Murong Yu at all. Murong Yu sneered. Since you're not afraid of death, then all of you can die because of your die-hard fans. As he spoke, Murong Yu repeatedly waved his hand. Chopsticks were shot out one after another. However, any chaotic space realm cultivator targeted by Murong Yu could not escape at all and was directly nailed in the void. After that, there was no more after that, because they were already dead. Although Murong Yu was only in the 3rd level of the chaotic space realm, his true strength was almost invincible in the chaotic space realm. There were high-level chaotic space realms among the people who attacked, but how could they be a match for him? Finally, after Murong Yu killed 40 to 50 people in a row, the remaining people were all scared out of their wits. Yes, they were die-hard fans. They would blindly worship the 36 Tianwu candidates. However, they also cherished their own lives. Previously, they had only wanted to rely on their numbers to kill Murong Yu. However, after seeing that they could not touch Murong Yu, they were finally afraid. A disdainful smile appeared on Murong Yu's face. Why are you scared? Not going to stand up for your idols? You trash. With trash fans like you, I'm afraid the 36 Tianwu candidates are nothing. Murong Yu is very unhappy to encounter such a situation for no reason. Therefore, even these people's idols made him unhappy. Hearing Murong Yu's words, the die-hard fans of the 36 Tianwu candidates were furious. However, in front of Murong Yu's despotic power, they dared to be angry but did not dare to say anything. Therefore, they could only glare angrily at Murong Yu, wishing that they could kill Murong Yu with their eyes. The 36 Tianwu candidates are indeed nothing much, but they are more than enough to kill trash like you. Just as the die-hard fans did not dare to make a sound, a cold voice containing monstrous anger suddenly sounded in the hall. At the same time, 3 figures slowly stepped in from outside. Swoosh! Everyone looked over, and the die-hard fans immediately became excited. It's Tyan Bazi, Tyan Whaley, and Tyan Kiatsi. This little bastard is dead for sure. The die-hard fans became excited again, chattering non-stop as if Murong Yu had already been killed by these 3 people. Murong Yu also looked over. These 3 young men were most likely 3 of the heavenly martial 36 disciples. Their strength was not bad, having already reached level 9 of the Chaos Realm. Moreover, their strength far surpassed ordinary cultivators of the same realm. However, in Murong Yu's eyes, they were just a pile of trash. No, they were 3 piles of trash. You are 3 of the 36 piles of trash in the Tianwu candidates? Murong Yu looked at Tyan Bazi and the other 2 with a disdainful gaze, his words sharp and unkind. The 36 piles of trash in the Tianwu candidates? Hearing this, Tyan Bazi's 3 lungs were about to explode. This was naked contempt, trampling, and humiliation. Little bastard, you will definitely die today. Tyan Kiatsi was a handsome young man, but at this moment, his face was ashen as he slowly walked over. Terrifying killing intent erupted from his body like stormy waves, crazily attacking Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu did not move at all. Chapter 1896. Little bastard, die for me. Tian Xiaozi roared. He took a step forward and rushed in front of Murong Yu. At the same time, He violently threw out a punch that carried a frightening aura capable of destroying the heavens and earth as it flew towards Murong-yu. Murong-yu shook his head. You didn't believe me when I said you were trash. With such trash strength, you still dare to come out and make a fool of yourself? Tianwu's 36 children? Trash like you dare to represent the Tianwu world's younger generation? You're really making me laugh my head off. Looking at the huge fist that was getting closer and closer, Murong-yu still taunted him unhurriedly. Tian Xiaozi was incomparably furious. His killing intent soared. His power once again erupted. Today, he would kill this bastard with a single punch. But why did my fist suddenly stop moving? Tian Xiaozi was puzzled and looked over. Looking over was not a big deal, but looking over gave him a big fright, because his fist had been caught by a big hand. The person who caught him was none other than Murong-yu. Tian Xiaozi was both shocked and angry. His terrifying power fiercely erupted. He wanted to shatter Murong-yu's big hand with a single punch. But what made him despair was that Murong-yu's big hand seemed to have existed since ancient times. No matter how he struggled, it remained motionless. On the contrary, as he struggled, Murong-yu's big hand grabbed him tighter and tighter. Asterisk ka-ka. Asterisk, a sound that made one's teeth ache continuously came from Tian Xiaozi's hand. After Tian Xiaozi, his hand bones were crushed by Murong-yu. Die for me, Tian Xiaozi roared. He ruthlessly kicked Murong-yu's lower body with a sinister kick. But even though he was fast, Murong-yu was even faster. Just as Tian Xiaozi's kick was about to hit Murong-yu, Murong-yu's kick arrived first and ruthlessly kicked Tian Xiaozi's balls. Crack! The crisp sound of an egg breaking resounded throughout the entire hall. At this moment, all the men in the hall couldn't help but tremble and clamp their legs together. Even though Tian Xiaozi had already reached the 9th stage of the chaotic space realm, the intense pain of having his balls crushed still made his face turn ashen. His body instantly arched as he let out a miserable scream. Hearing this, the people in the lobby felt their legs tremble. What a despicable little bastard. You actually dare to use such despicable tricks. This little bastard is too insidious. We must kill him. Everyone in the hall began to curse at Murong-yu. This made Murong-yu's face even darker. Die-hard fans were indeed extremely die-hard. They didn't see Tian Xiaozi being sinister and despicable in the first place. On the contrary, it was Murong-yu who became incomparably sinister and despicable, although Murong-yu was indeed somewhat despicable. However, to deal with despicable people, one had to use even more despicable methods. Let go of Tian Xiaozi, or you will die. With a loud shout, Tian Baozi and Tian Weizi both roared and used their own methods to attack Murong-yu. Furthermore, it was only when their attacks were about to land on Murong-yu's body that they shouted. It was obvious that these two idiots were trying to sneak up on Murong-yu. Murong-yu was somewhat furious, but he soon felt relieved. These people mingled together all day long. They were definitely jackals of the same tribe, wearing the same pants. How noble and unquestionable integrity could one expect from them? This is the true face of Tianwu's 36 piles of trash, right? Despicable and shameless. Murong-yu shook his head and sent Tian Xiaozi, who was still screaming miserably, flying with a kick. At the same time, he moved as fast as lightning. Slap! Slap! 2 resounding slaps resounded in the lobby on the first floor. Following that, the die-hard fans watched in horror as their 2 idols, who had been crowned as celestials, were sent flying by Murong-yu's palm like sandbags. Pooh! Pooh! 2 balls of blood, mixed with a white substance, spurted out. As for Tian Baozi and Tian Weizi, they turned into streams of light and were sent flying by Murong-yu. None of this was real. How could their idols be so weak? This little bastard must have used some despicable and shameless method to plot against Tian Baozi and the other 2, and then defeated them. Yes, it must be so. The brainless fans instantly thought of a reason, and then they all looked at Murong-yu with murderous intent. However, no one dared to make a move. After all, their idols were sent flying by Murong-yu. How could they dare to go up? I said you guys are trash, but you guys are really trash. You can't even withstand a single blow. You guys really deserve the glorious title of Tianwu's 36 piles of trash. Murong-Yu's face was full of disdain. In fact, Murong-Yu wasn't pretending. He really didn't care. In fact, he was a little disappointed. The 6 heavenly kings, the top 8 of District 4, and the 36 disciples of Tianwu represented the younger generation of Tianwu world. They were also the 50 strongest people in the chaotic realm. But they couldn't even withstand a single blow? Little bastard, I'm going to kill you. At this moment, a roar that could shatter the sky exploded. At the same time, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from the lobby, suppressing the souls of the brainless fans and causing them to tremble. Murong-Yu's eyes flashed, and he turned to look. He saw Tian Baozi, whose clothes were tattered and stained with blood, striding over with murderous intent. He was holding a long spear in his hand. The incomparably terrifying aura was being emitted from this long spear. It was a bright world realm origin artifact. Moreover, Tian Baozi could already activate most of its power. Now, Tian Baozi's strength was comparable to an expert who had just broken through to the bright world realm. Boom! At this moment, Tian Xiaozi, who had been hugging his egg and crying in pain, slowly approached with murderous intent. Similarly, he also had a bright world realm origin artifact in his hand. He could also activate the power of this origin artifact. It was a dagger. Murong-Yu looked at Tian Baozi. As one of Tianwu's 36 piles of trash, there was no reason for Tian Baozi and Tian Xiaozi to have bright world realm origin artifacts while Tian Baozi didn't. As expected, Tian Baozi also had one. However, when Murong-Yu saw the origin artifact in his hand, he couldn't help but spit. Why was that? Because Tian Baozi's bright world realm origin artifact was actually a morning staff. Morning staff, Tian Baozi, and that dead face, they were a perfect match. The 3 masters are about to get serious. Hurry up and leave. One of the die-hard fans in the lobby shouted, and then left the lobby first. Thus, in the blink of an eye, only Murong-Yu and the 3 piles of trash were left in the hall. No, it should be the 3 of Tianwu's 36 disciples. Tian Baozi and the other 2 slowly closed in on Murong-Yu. With every step they took, their auras increased by a notch. They all knew how powerful Murong-Yu was. They were prepared to kill Murong-Yu in one blow. However, Murong-Yu still stood in place with a calm expression. He didn't move at all. Seeing Murong-Yu's reaction, Tian Baozi and the other 2 laughed in their hearts. As one of Tianwu's 36 disciples, were they really so weak? Spear piercing the firmament. Cudgel smashing the universe. Shattering the void. When the 3 closed in on Murong-Yu, their aura had already reached the peak. Thus, the 3 of them roared at almost the same time and attacked at the same time. Rumble, this was their all-out attack. After an earth-shattering explosion, everything in the hall was instantly turned to dust. A terrifying aura penetrated the hall's walls and swept in all directions. Plop, plop. In the blink of an eye, those brainless fans outside the restaurant were directly suppressed by this terrifying aura and fell to the ground in a dog-eat-shit posture. The frightening power almost caused some of the die-hard fans to explode. This was the aura of a bright world realm ancestor. A brainless fan who had seen a bright world realm ancestor fight cried out in surprise. Then, the brainless fans were pleasantly surprised. The 3 sirs have all unleashed bright world realm ancestor level attacks. That little bastard must be dead. Let him slander the sirs. Ha ha! All the brainless fans were beaming with joy, as if they had killed Murong-Yu. However, compared to their happiness, the 3 piles of trash in the restaurant's hall, no, Tian Baozi and the other 2's hearts sank. They had already unleashed their strongest attacks, but they were still unable to kill Murong-Yu. In fact, not to mention killing Murong-Yu, they couldn't even tear the corner of Murong-Yu's clothes. This was because Murong-Yu had just stood there and taken their attacks. Their strongest attacks were unable to kill Murong-Yu. The 3 of them looked at each other. Then their figures flashed, and they were about to retreat. They were actually going to escape. They were one of the 36 disciples of the Sky Martial Kingdom, and they weren't stupid people. Since they weren't Murong Yu's match, where were they going to escape if not now? However, would Murong Yu let them escape? Just as they were retreating, Murong Yu attacked. In almost an instant, he threw out 3 punches. 3 punches. All of them landed on the backs of the 3. The terrifying fist energy exploded and sent the 3 of them flying, causing them to spit out blood. Immediately after, Murong Yu made his move again. He stretched out his hand, grabbed all of them, and threw them to the ground. Impossible. You're only at level 3 Chaotic Space Realm. How can you take the attacks of 3 Bright World Realm ancestors? Tian Baozi looked at Murong Yu in shock. Murong Yu looked at the 3 of them pitifully and shook his head. Do you think I'm too strong? No, you're wrong. You're too weak. You're too weak. We're too weak. Tian Baozi couldn't help but murmur. Confusion gradually appeared on his face. Then, he gradually became addicted and couldn't extricate himself. Murong Yu smiled coldly and disappeared from the hall in a flash. He didn't kill the 3 of them. Because of his attacks, an indelible knot had formed in their hearts. If this knot couldn't be untied, they would be like this for the rest of their lives. As for whether they were too weak, that was impossible. Even a rank 1 Bright World Realm ancestor would have been blasted into smithereens by their attacks. It wasn't that they were too weak, but Murong Yu was too strong. Chapter 1897. After leaving the Green Peak restaurant, Murong Yu's expression became solemn. He might have blocked it easily just now, and even withstood the attacks of the 3 great Tianwu 36 Tianwu signs that were equivalent to Bright World Realm ancestors. But in reality, the strength of the Tianwu 36 signs could not be underestimated. It was not that they were too weak, but that Murong Yu was too strong. Because although Murong Yu was only at level 3 Chaotic Space Realm, the spatial laws he controlled were much stronger than the spatial laws of the 3. In terms of comprehension of laws, the Tianwu 36 ions were also at the top. When attacking, combined with the spatial laws, the power was at least a few times stronger than a pure battle skill. However, the gap between them was that their comprehension of spatial laws was far inferior to Murong Yu's. Furthermore, they only comprehended the laws, while Murong Yu cultivated the laws of space. Just now, it seemed that the attacks of the 3 had directly landed on Murong Yu's body. However, in the blink of an eye, Murong Yu had used the power of the spatial laws to dodge the attack. It looked like they had slashed on Murong Yu's body, but in reality, they had only slashed on the void. Moreover, their attacks had been guided into the depths of space by Murong Yu. Therefore, Murong Yu looked as if nothing had happened. In reality, he had not been attacked at all, so of course he would act as if nothing had happened. The Tianwu 36 scions cannot be underestimated. These 3 fellows are only the last 3 of the Tianwu 36 scions. If they are ranked first, how strong is he? Not to mention, there are still the top 8 of the Tianwu 36 scions. Above the top 8, there are still the 6 heavenly kings. Murong Yu thought in his heart, but his eyes were already flickering with a terrifying light. He gradually became excited. He longed to fight with these top geniuses of the Tianwu world. After coming to the Tianwu world, the weakest Murong Yu had faced was a Bright World Realm ancestor. Therefore, Murong Yu had always been in a very sorry state. He had spent most of his time being hunted down. However, even though he was in such a sorry state, it was only because his opponents were too powerful. They were a whole realm stronger than him, and there was even a terrifying existence who was half a step into the blessed realm. However, being able to spar with these ancestors was of great benefit to Murong Yu. Under the pressure of life and death, Murong Yu's battle strength continued to rise. He hadn't made any breakthroughs in his cultivation because he hadn't accumulated enough power. However, he was constantly improving in all other aspects. Once he accumulated enough power, he would be able to advance to the next level without any suspense. It was impossible to test Murong Yu's strength by fighting the great ancestors who were too weak. Therefore, Murong Yu longed to fight with top geniuses who were at the same level as him. After defeating the 36 children, Murong Yu left Qingfeng City and flew towards the Tianwu City. There was no teleportation array between the two cities, so this was the only way. Soon, Murong Yu arrived at the west gate of Heaven Marshal City. After taking a look at the majestic city walls, Murong Yu walked towards the queue. There was no choice. One couldn't fly into Heaven Marshal City directly from the sky. One could only enter through the city gate. Moreover, one had to pay a certain amount of crystals. Moreover, because the Sun sect was recruiting disciples, too many people flocked over. When Murong Yu was queuing, the queue had already stretched for several miles. Murong Yu couldn't help but feel depressed. However, he had no choice but to line up. He wasn't a big shot, so he couldn't cut the queue. However, at least there were powerful cultivators here, so the queue moved very quickly. Not long after, it was almost Murong Yu's turn. "Brat, I'll buy your seat." A ferocious voice suddenly rang in Murong Yu's ears as he was bored waiting in line. Murong Yu was shocked. There was someone who wanted to buy a spot in the queue. "Kid, are you selling or not?" Seeing Murong Yu's shocked expression, the man thought that Murong Yu had been scared stiff. Thus, he impatiently shouted with a murderous look on his face. Murong Yu indifferently glanced at the man. "I'm not selling. You're courting death." The man was enraged. He reached out his hand and slapped Murong Yu's face. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light. He looked coldly at the man. "If you don't take back your dog's paw, I'll take it for you." The man was laughing in his heart, but suddenly, an intense aura of death rose in his heart. Immediately, he was startled and quickly retreated backward. "Idiot," Murong Yu said in disdain. Then, he took a few steps forward. Because there were more than 10 people in front of him, it would be his turn to enter the city. As for why the man didn't buy a spot from the people in front of Murong Yu, it was very simple. The people in front of Murong Yu were all high-level Murong Yu. Only Murong Yu was a pushover in the level 3 chaotic realm. Therefore, the man naturally chose Murong Yu as his target. "Trash. You can't even buy a spot. What's the use of having you?" At that moment, a group of people walked over. A young man who looked to be in his 20s walked in front of the man who had bought a spot from Murong Yu and started punching and kicking him. The man didn't dare to resist at all and could only passively take the beating. However, his eyes were filled with hatred as he glared at Murong Yu. It was as if he had transferred all his hatred to Murong Yu. Murong Yu only looked at him in disdain. He was just an ant. If he dared to provoke him again, he would just trample him to death. "Kid, you're very good. How dare you reject young Master Yin? Do you know who I, young Master Yin, am? You're dead meat." A sinister voice was heard. It was the young man. Murong Yu couldn't be bothered with him. At the same time, he was puzzled. This fool actually bought a spot. Why didn't he just bribe the guards with crystals? Wouldn't that mean he didn't even need to line up? Seeing that Murong Yu actually ignored him, young Master Yun's eyes were filled with killing intent. He wanted to order people to hack Murong Yu to death. But in the end, he looked fearfully in the direction of the city gate and didn't dare to make a move. In the end, young Master Yun threatened the few people behind Murong Yu and bought their spots. "Little bastard, after entering Heaven Marshal City, it will be your death. Just you wait." Young Master Yin was talking nonsense behind Murong Yu. When he heard Murong Yu, he was infuriated and wanted to turn around and slap him to death. However, in the end, Murong Yu endured it. Didn't young Master Yun say that he could kill him after entering the city? When the time came, let's see who would kill who. Murong Yu's heart was already filled with murderous intent as she kept calling him a little bastard. Soon, after paying 100 crystals, Murong Yu entered the city gate. However, before he could take a few steps, an arrogant and hateful voice came from behind him. "Chop that little bastard up and feed him to the dogs." "Bastard, how dare you not give me, young Master Yun face? You're really courting death." Who else could it be other than that fool, young Master Yin? Swish! Young Master Yin had a few guards by his side. After hearing young Master Yun's order, the few guards, including the man who was beaten up by young Master Yin, rushed forward and surrounded Murong Yu. Then, each of them slowly approached with a sinister smile. The weakest among them was at level 3 Chaos Realm, while the strongest was at level 5 Chaos Realm. Kid, kneel down and kowtow to young Master Yun. Then I'll let you die a quick death. Otherwise, who in the Heaven Marshal City doesn't know of our young Master Yun's cruel methods? The man who asked Murong Yu to buy a seat previously smiled sinisterly and took large strides towards Murong Yu with a venomous expression. Murong Yu ignored them and slowly turned to look at young Master Yun. At the same time, he revealed a smile on his face. Young Master Yun, what rank is your Yun family in the Heaven Marshal City? Young Master Yun revealed a sinister smile. Our Yun family is naturally a level 5 force. Are you afraid? However, it's too late. Even if you kneel down and kowtow, you'll definitely die today. Heaven Marshal City was the largest city in the Heaven Marshal world and was controlled by the 6 great forces. However, the headquarters of the 6 great forces were not here. In Heaven Marshal City, other than the 6 great forces, there were thousands of other forces and families. These families were divided into 9 ranks according to the strength of their ancestors. Families with level 9 Bright World Realm ancestors were considered level 9 forces. Level 8 forces were those with level 8 Bright World Realm ancestors, and so on and so forth. If a force did not even have a Bright World Realm ancestor, then sorry to say, these forces were all classified as unrated forces. There are more forces in Heaven Marshal City. Level 5 force meant that the Yun family had level 5 Bright World Realm ancestors, and there might be more than one. Based on this, the Yun family could be considered a mid-tier force in Heaven Marshal City. Murong Yu nodded and suddenly said, I didn't expect a level 5 force like the Yun family to eat sh*t every day. Why is your mouth so smelly? The surrounding people were stunned. When they saw Murong Yu asking young Master Yun in a serious manner, they thought that Murong Yu was afraid and was measuring the Yun family's power. However, they did not expect Murong Yu to say such a thing. Puffed. When they reacted, the surrounding people could not help but spit. However, young Master Yun's expression was extremely ugly. What are you guys still standing there for? Beat this little bastard to death. Young Master Yun roared with an ashen face. Slap. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was slapped hard on the face. Then, young Master Yun saw himself flying up by himself. He even saw a blood-red firework. Young Master Yun could not help but feel baffled. He did not fly up, so how did he fly up by himself? However, the pain on his face made him wake up very quickly. It was not that he flew up, but that he was sent flying by someone. When he reached out to touch, half of his face was gone. Instantly, young Master Yun was enraged. Kill this little bastard. No, don't kill him. I want him to suffer a fate worse than death. Seeing the flustered and exasperated young Master Yun, his lackeys shuddered and immediately pounced on Murong Yu. If they could not take down Murong Yu, they would definitely die. Chapter 1898. Get lost if you don't want to die. Murong Yu shouted coldly. He was truly enraged. He did not know these people at all and did not provoke them. Yet they wanted to kill him? Young Master Yun's lackeys paused for a moment when they heard him, but they quickly pounced on him. No matter how powerful Murong Yu was, he was only a level 3 Chaotic Void Realm cultivator. There were level 5 Chaotic Void Realm cultivators among them, which was enough to kill Murong Yu. Therefore, the crowd continued to pounce on Murong Yu. Moreover, each of them unleashed a terrifying power in an attempt to suppress Murong Yu. It's over. This young man is finished. He's only a level 3 Chaotic Void Realm cultivator and offended young Master Yun. His future is bleak. Seeing the lackeys attacking, the surrounding people could not help but shake their heads and sigh. Although young Master Yun's clan was only considered a middle-class clan in Heaven Marshal City, young Master Yun was notorious and many people recognized him. However, although these people were furious at young Master Yun for killing the innocent, they did not dare to voice their anger. They were not strong, so how could they dare to go against a 5th-grade clan? A cold, murderous intent flashed across Murong Yu's brows. He immediately used his fingers like a sword and slashed out. Puff, puff, puff. After a few muffled sounds, a few clouds of blood mist bloomed in the void. The surrounding people were shocked. They saw young Master Yun's ferocious lackeys pouncing on Murong Yu being slashed in half by Murong Yu's sword. Plop, the corpses fell to the ground, but there was no longer any sign of life. Their souls had been shattered by Murong Yu, and they could not be more dead. Little bastard, how dare you kill my Yun clan's people? You're dead meat. Young Master Yin had already stood up. When he saw Murong Yu killing his lackeys, he pointed at Murong Yu furiously and screamed. Noisy! Murong Yu shouted coldly and stomped young Master Yin, who had just stood up, to the ground. Meanwhile, Murong Yu's huge foot stomped young Master Yun's head deep into the ground. Little bastard, you're dead for sure. No one can save you now that you've offended our Yun family. You're dead meat. Young Master Yin was still shrieking furiously. His voice was filled with resentment. The people around them shook their heads and looked at young Master Yin with disdain. This fellow was indeed a big idiot. Even though he was being stepped on, he did not beg for mercy. Instead, he was threatening the other party? Murong Yu didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. You think I don't dare to kill you? Little bastard, our Yun family has a level 5 bright world realm ancestor overseeing it. If you dare to kill me, you will die without a doubt. Young Master Yun hooted. He was not worried that Murong Yu would dare to kill him. However, before he could finish his sentence, a strong force was applied to his body. Then, young Master Yun heard the sound of a skull shattering. Then, his vision turned black, and he slowly lost consciousness. How dare he kill me? How dare he kill me? Young Master Yun finally reacted. Wasn't the sound of his skull being stepped on? Idiot! Murong Yu sneered and turned to leave. However, before he left, he still took away young Master Yun's spatial treasure. After killing young Master Yun, his spatial treasure was naturally Murong Yu's spoils of war. The surrounding people were stunned by Murong Yu. Murong Yu, a mere level 3 chaotic realm, dared to kill a member of a 5th grade family on the street. Although Heaven Marshal City didn't prohibit killing for revenge, wasn't this too blatant? Young man, the Yin family isn't anything good. They're very protective of their own. You'd better leave Heaven Marshal City quickly. Just as Murong Yu was about to leave, an old man suddenly advised. Murong Yu nodded slightly at the old man. If he was afraid of the Yin family, he wouldn't have killed young Master Yin on the street. Wasn't it just a 5th grade family? He wasn't even afraid of the 6 great families. At most, he could just change his appearance again. You want to leave after killing someone from my Yin family? At that moment, a cold voice came from afar. Then, before the voice could finish, a figure appeared in front of Murong Yu. It was a young man in his 20s. Of course, this was only his appearance. Who knew how young he really was? Third young Master Yin. Seeing this person, the surrounding people couldn't help but exclaim. At the same time, they had already retreated. It was obvious that they were afraid of the third young Master Yin. Murong Yu looked over. The third young Master Yin's strength was not bad. At least, his cultivation level was much higher than his. He had already reached level 7 chaotic realm. At that moment, the third young Master Yin had already unleashed the terrifying aura of a level 7 chaotic realm. He crazily suppressed Murong Yu, wanting to kill Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu had easily defeated the 36 Sky Martial disciples, let alone the third young Master Yin. In his eyes, the third young Master Yin's aura attack was full of loopholes and was extremely laughable. Kneel down and kill yourself. Otherwise, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. The third young Master Yin looked at Murong Yu with disdain. Murong Yu stopped as an impatient expression appeared on his face. Scram. Otherwise, I will send you to meet young Master Yin. What a little bastard. The third young Master Yin was furious. He stretched out his large hand and turned it into a sharp claw. He grabbed at Murong Yu's head, wanting to crush Murong Yu's head. A cold, murderous intent flashed in Murong Yu's eyes. He was really sick of these little bastards. Therefore, he threw out a punch without even looking at it. Crack! The third young Master Yun's face suddenly revealed a look of pain. The reason was that his claw had already been crushed by Murongyu's punch. However, Murongyu's fist was invincible. It didn't even pause for a moment and directly landed on the third young Master Yun's body. With a loud boom, the third young Master Yun let out a cry of pain. His entire body was blasted apart. After that, there was no more after that. His soul had been crushed by Murongyu's punch, and he had gone to the underworld with young Master Yun. After taking the third young Master Yun's space treasure, Murongyu left. As for the Yun family, he had never been afraid of them. Not long after, Murongyu found an inn and booked a room. Due to the Sun Sect's recruitment, these inns were almost full, and the price had skyrocketed. However, who asked Murongyu to have so many crystals when he didn't have much? One must know that he had the entire treasury of the Sky Sea sect. In the Hichu Luo Shu, Murongyu was about to throw away young Master Yun's space treasure when a look of surprise appeared on his face. Originally, he was not interested in the space treasure of a little bastard like young Master Yun. After all, what kind of treasure could this little bastard have? Now that Murongyu had the entire treasury of the Sky Sea sect, his standards were very high. He took young Master Yun's space treasure because he did not want to waste it. However, he did not expect to find something when he probed it with his divine telekinesis. With a single thought, a palm-sized, irregular black object that looked like metal appeared in Murongyu's hand. It did not look like metal, but Murongyu could not tell what material it was made of. However, it did not matter. What Murongyu saw was an extremely powerful light. This small object did not give off any powerful aura, and no one would pick it up even if it was left on the streets. However, the light it emitted was comparable to a top-notch bright world realm origin artifact. It was almost comparable to a creation realm origin artifact. What was this? Murongyu immediately started studying it out of curiosity. Soon, he realized that his divine telekinesis could not penetrate it. This is a star core. Hichu's surprised voice rang in Murongyu's mind. What is a star core? Murongyu did not understand. A star core is the core of a planet. It contains the power of the entire planet, Hichu explained. It contained the power of the entire planet, but even the most ordinary planet had more power than that, right? Although the crystal core in Murongyu's hand contained the power of a half-step to the creation realm expert, it was still a little weak compared to the power of an entire planet. Murongyu estimated that even the power of a mediocre planet like the Holy World would not be inferior to a creation realm expert. This is an incomplete star core, and it's only a star core of the lowest level planet. It doesn't contain much power, but the power is very pure. It can even be directly devoured for cultivation, Hichu explained. Murongyu was shocked. If a star core can be directly used for cultivation, then wouldn't those experts have gone to refine planets? Hichu laughed. Not every planet has a star core. Only a planet that has died due to normal aging will have a star core. Otherwise, even if a planet is crushed and compressed, a star core will not appear. Therefore, even in the endless starry sky, a star core is a rare treasure. Every time one appears, it will cause a bloodbath. Murongyu was even more confused. The power contained in the star core in his hand was at most equivalent to a half-step to the creation realm expert. A creation realm expert would not be interested in it. How could it cause a bloodbath? Actually, the most precious thing about a star core is not its pure power, but the various principles and insights contained in it. A star core contains all the principles and insights of a planet's birth, growth, and destruction. These principles and insights are something that even experts of higher realms need. Do you know the difference between the creation realm and the bright world realm? A bright world realm expert can cultivate the laws of time, but a creation realm expert can already create things out of thin air. However, it was not something that every half-step to the blessed realm expert could achieve. This is because they have not comprehended how to create things. If they can't comprehend it for a day, they will never be able to break through, even if they have enough power. Although you're not afraid that you can't comprehend it, or that you don't need to comprehend it at all. However, this star core also has great benefits for you. Murongyu's emotions surged. The creation realm was actually creating things, creating all things? Then what was after the creation realm? Could it be the creation of the world? Creation of the world, and then destruction of the world? The birth of heaven and earth, growth, and then destruction. This was a cycle that would last for a long time. All things in heaven and earth were born from chaos, and after destruction, they would return to chaos. What was a chaos controller? To become a chaos controller, one had to learn how to create things, create the world, and then destroy it. This cycle would last for a long time. Perhaps this was the true essence of being a chaos controller. All of a sudden, Murong Yu came to a realization. Chapter 1899. These epiphanies could not increase Murong Yu's realm and combat strength. However, once these epiphanies appeared, they would gradually germinate and grow in Murong Yu's body. This would allow Murong Yu's future cultivation path to be smoother, and he would take fewer detours to become a chaos controller. Young Master Yun is such a good person. Murong Yu stared at the incomplete crystal core in his hand and could not help but laugh. If young Master Yun had not taken the initiative to ask for a beating, why would Murong Yu have killed him? Without young Master Yun, how would he have obtained young Master Yun's spatial treasure? How would he have obtained such a precious treasure? That was a star core, a precious treasure that even ancestral patriarchs in the blessed realm and terrifying experts in higher realms would fight for. However, Murong Yu now had a problem. Was he going to refine the star core, or not to refine it? He was only at level 3 chaotic space realm now, and there was still a long way to go before he reached the creation realm. If he refined it now, even if he comprehended the birth, growth, and destruction of a planet, he would not be able to combine it with his cultivation situation to maximize the benefits. Although he could definitely increase his realm after refining it, it seemed a little wasteful. However, if he did not refine it, his realm would still be too low even though he was powerful. Even if he was invincible in the same realm, it would still be a little difficult to fight across realms. How powerful were the 6 heavenly kings? After thinking about it, Murong Yu definitely did not refine it for the time being. This was because he did not want to obtain first place at all. He just needed to appear. After putting away the star core, Murong Yu was about to meet up with Zhao, Jiqing, and a few others. However, at that moment, the door of the inn he was in was kicked open with a bang. Murong Yu's heart sank, and he immediately walked out of the Hichu Luo Shu. A group of people filed in, all of them brimming with killing intent. People from the Yin family? Murong Yu looked over and realized that the people who entered were all young people. At least, they all looked young. 6 of them. Not only were they young, but their strength was also similar. They were both at level 9 of the chaotic space realm. You are Murong Yu? The young man in the lead looked at Murong Yu with disdain and asked indifferently. His gaze was as if he was looking at an ant. That's right. Murong Yu looked at him and said indifferently. All right, it's you. Was it you who defeated Tian Bao Zi and the others? Furthermore, you said that we, the 36 children of the Sky Martial Kingdom, are trash? A youth jumped out and looked at Murong Yu with a murderous look. At this time, the matter of Murong Yu defeating Tian Bao Zi and the rest had already spread out. Of course, what circulated the most was Murong Yu's classic words. Tianwu's 36 piles of trash. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. His eyes narrowed slightly and a smile appeared on his face. Oh, so you're also one of the 36 piles of trash in the Sky Martial Kingdom. Tell me, what are you doing here? The 6 of them were enraged, their killing intent skyrocketing. The 36 children of the Sky Martial Kingdom usually walked together. It could be said that they were of the same breath and branch. Not only were they humiliated by Murong Yu, but Tian Bao Zi was also defeated and humiliated. Naturally, they were here to cause trouble. Courting death. It was the same youth who spoke before. He roared and shot in front of Murong Yu. His invincible divine fist smashed towards Murong Yu's head. Not only did the other 6 not stop him, they sneered instead. They also wanted to attack, but the opportunity was snatched away. A cold, killing intent flashed across Murong Yu's eyes, because he felt a strong killing intent from this youth. These people wanted to kill him. One had to know that he did not know them. Bang. The pupils of Tian Kongzi and the rest constricted. Just now, in the instant that Tian Kongzi's fist was about to explode Murong Yu's head, Murong Yu also made a move. To be precise, it was Murong Yu who made a move. He did not use any magical ability or battle skill, just a kick. One kick landed on Tian Kongzi's abdomen, kicking until Tian Kongzi's entire body bent, and he was directly sent flying. Tian Kongzi let out a miserable scream. Although Murong Yu showed mercy and did not shatter his dantian, Murong Yu's power poured into his body and started wreaking havoc inside. If he could not expel Murong Yu's power, he would live in agony for the rest of his life. What a vicious little bastard, die for me. Tian Kongzi's strength was still the strongest among the five. He blocked Tian Yitzi and the other three who were about to attack. Taking a step forward, he attacked Murong Yu. Murong Yu could not help laughing from extreme anger. You trash came in and wanted to kill me. I only injured that trash, and you say I'm vicious? You really know how to play the blame game. But it doesn't matter. Trash like you delivered yourself to my door for me to beat. It would be a waste not to beat you up. As he spoke, Murong Yu also attacked. In a flash, Tian Kongzi also let out a miserable scream. Then, half his face was smashed by Murong Yu's palm, and he was directly sent flying. Murong Yu did not stop there. He stretched out his hand and attacked repeatedly. Tian Yitzi and the other two were also beaten to the ground. Although the 36 Tianwu Scions were the elites of the Tianwu world's chaotic realm, they were only below the 6 heavenly kings and the top 8 of the 4th region. However, they had encountered Murong Yu, an invincible chaotic realm fellow. Tian Kongzi and the others were indeed strong. They were even stronger than peak chaotic realm ancestors. However, as long as their strength did not surpass the chaotic realm, they were not Murong Yu's match. So what if they surpassed the bright world realm? They were still not Murong Yu's match. That was because Murong Yu's spatial and temporal laws were of a higher level than theirs. As long as they were not true bright world realm ancestors, they were definitely not Murong Yu's match. In fact, they could not even withstand a single blow. With a few punches, Murong Yu beat Tian Kongzi and the other two to the ground. As for Tian Kongzi and the other two, they had charged in with great momentum. They had even broken through the door and entered, attracting a lot of people. Now, many people had seen this scene. However, the crowd was very quiet because they were all stunned by Murong Yu. Almost everyone knew the 36 Tianwu Scions, and the 36 Tianwu Scions had always been high and mighty. They were their idols. But now, Murong Yu had beaten them to the ground with a single punch. They did not believe it. Murong Yu stretched out his hand and directly took away their spatial treasures. In fact, Murong Yu had even forcibly taken away their treasures. However, after thinking about it, he decided to forget about it. If he did that, the sects behind these people might jump out. After bullying the young, the old would naturally jump out. Although Murong Yu was not afraid, he did not want to cause more trouble. After all, the sect behind the 36 Tianwu Scions were also the top in the Tianwu world. Scram. Go back and wash your dog eyes clean. Properly recognize who is not someone you can offend. Murong Yu kicked Tian Kongzi and the other three away and said expressionlessly, "This is the strength of the 36 Tianwu Scions? I heard that Tian Baozi and the other two were beaten by a cultivator who was only in the 3rd level of the chaotic world realm. I did not believe it at that time, but I believe it now. Damn, are the 36 Tianwu Scions all trash? They can't even beat a 3rd level chaotic world realm. I'm really blind. To think that I used to be their diehard fan. Damn, this kind of trash is not worthy of my worship. I was wrong to worship them." A middle-aged man fiercely spat and said angrily, "That's right. This kind of fame-fishing thing is not worthy of our worship. The 36 Tianwu Scions, I think it's more like the 36 piles of trash." Angry shouts continuously came from the crowd. Damn, I really suspect that these bastards have today's fame. Is it because their sects work together to hype it up? Is it to trick us? Yes, it must be like that. Hearing that, the surrounding crowd suddenly understood. Murong Yu was stunned. He did not expect that his actions would turn these die-hard fans into passers-by and then become fans. This was definitely a huge blow to the 36 Tianwu science. I wonder what they are thinking. Tian Kongzi and the other five's expressions were very ugly. They silently stood up and stared at Murongyu with incomparably resentful eyes. Murongyu, we, the 36 Tianwu science, will remember you. Tian Kongzi looked at Murongyu and said calmly. However, the venomous look in his eyes only increased. Scram, trash. Before Murongyu could say anything, the surrounding people began to chase them away. This was the terrifying part of die-hard fans. If they were still die-hard fans, they would protect you at all costs. However, if they became fans, they would not show any mercy. Tian Kongzi and the other five wanted to leave behind some ruthless words before leaving. However, seeing more and more people gathering, they finally shook their heads and left. If they did not leave, these fans would throw tomatoes and eggs at them. Murongyu turned around and was about to enter his room. Murongyu, good job. You must defeat the 36 Tianwu Science and ruthlessly trample them to death. At this moment, an angry roar came from the crowd. That's right. Trample all those fishing trash. We support you. Murongyu's face darkened. These people seemed to have become his die-hard fans. Unfortunately, the difference between fans and believers was too big. No matter how much these people worshipped, they were still unable to provide Murongyu with the power of faith. Speaking of the power of faith, almost everyone in the holy world was Murongyu's believer. However, the power of faith was getting weaker and weaker. It was less and less helpful to him. The power of faith did not decrease. On the contrary, it was constantly increasing. However, the strength of the people in the holy world was too low. The level of the power of faith was also too low. It was not of much help to Murongyu. Should I occupy a few origin planets, rule them, and make them my believers? Murongyu suddenly had this thought. What's the use of one origin planet? If I want to rule, I will rule the entire solar system. Another thought appeared in Murongyu's mind. Chapter 1900. The solar system was a gigantic region made up of countless stars. As long as he unified the solar system, Murongyu would have the ability to make everyone in the solar system his followers, providing him with an endless supply of faith power. Furthermore, unifying the solar system was different from unifying the holy world. To become the master of the holy world, one had to be recognized by the origin energy of the holy world. Otherwise, even if a rebirth or chaos realm expert entered the holy world and suppressed all living beings, they would still not be able to become the master of the holy world. However, it was different in the solar system. One did not need to be recognized by the origin energy. Otherwise, with so many stars in the solar system, who could be recognized by the origin energy of all the stars? Moreover, if there was such a powerful person, he would not need to become the master of the solar system. Therefore, to become the master of the solar system, one only needed to have sufficient strength and support. However, it was not easy to become the master of the solar system. One had to be at least at the peak of the manifestation realm, or even higher. To become the master of the solar system, one only needed to become the leader of the solar sect. According to the demonists, the lunar sect and the solar sect were the two strongest forces in the solar system. However, the position of the master of the solar system had always been held by the solar sect. In other words, Murongyu becoming a disciple of the solar sect was not wrong. These were all things for the future. Murongyu did not think too much about it. Thinking too much would be biting off more than he could chew. Murongyu did not have such a habit. Murongyu, get out here. Originally, Murongyu wanted to return to his room. Although the door was broken, he could just set up a restriction. However, before he could return to his room, a voice filled with killing intent sounded. Murongyu's face darkened. His ability to attract hatred was too strong. Ever since he came to the Tianwu world, he had never been at peace. He was not the one looking for trouble. It was the trouble that came looking for him. Was he easy to bully? A cold, killing intent flashed past Murongyu's eyes. Since these people liked to look for trouble, he would beat them all to death. Beat them until they were afraid. beat them until they trembled when they heard his name. Would they still dare to look for trouble then? Thus, he turned around and flew away from the inn. Which bastard is calling me? Murong was angry that he was constantly being harassed. His words were not polite at all. Boom! Before Murong's voice fell, a shocking saber light split the sky, carrying an incomparably terrifying aura as it crazily slashed down. Sneak attack? Murong's killing intense sword. He threw out a punch. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the shocking saber light was directly shattered into pieces and exploded. At this time, Murong also moved. He took a step forward and disappeared from where he stood in a flash. When he reappeared, he was already in the void in front of a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was holding a powerful origin tool in his hand as he looked ahead in shock. It was obvious that he was still in a state of shock from the fact that Murong had shattered his saber chi with a single punch. Murong took a step forward. Boom! His large foot was like a mountain as it fiercely suppressed the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man quickly reacted and was about to retreat in a flash. However, it was too late. Murong's large foot had already ruthlessly stepped on his head. A terrifying power erupted and directly stomped the middle-aged man's head deep into his abdomen. Then, the middle-aged man fell from the void and smashed a huge crater in the ground. Then, there was no then this time. This was because the middle-aged man's life force had already disappeared when Murong stepped on his head. That's young Master Yun. It is said that he is at the peak of the chaotic realm, and his strength is extremely terrifying. He is comparable to the 36 Tianwu science. Someone recognized the middle-aged man's identity and exclaimed in surprise. Stomping a peak chaotic realm expert to death with a single step? This was not shocking. As long as one was a bright world realm ancestor, they could do it. However, Murong was only at level 3 chaotic realm. Wasn't this too terrifying? He's just a young expert from a 5th rank family. How can he be inferior to the 36 Tianwu science? What's more, Murong can beat Tian Kongzi with a single punch. The people who followed Murong out, namely his fans, were already used to this scene. In fact, there were even people that started to laugh mockingly. Hiss, the surrounding people gasped. Murong could actually defeat Tian Kongzi with a single punch? One must know that the 36 Tianwu science were also divided into ranks. Tian Kongzi's ranking was far above Tian Baozi and the others. He belonged to the upper middle level of the 36 Tianwu science. Yet, he could not withstand a single punch from Murong. Who was this guy? How could he be so heaven-defying? Everyone turned to look at Murong, who had an indifferent expression on his face. Who else is here to court death? Murong glanced at the surrounding people indifferently and said in a deep voice. When they met his gaze, everyone lowered their heads. Murong's gaze also contained great power. They did not dare to meet his gaze at all. Of course, there are also some bright world realm experts nearby. However, although these people were shocked by Murong's strength in their eyes, he was still just an ant. Therefore, although Murong was heaven-defying, it was not enough for them to take him seriously. Next time, before you come looking for trouble, wash your neck first. Murong shouted in a low voice. Then, he took a step forward and shuttled through the void, quickly disappearing into the distance. After a few breaths, Murong's figure had already disappeared from everyone's line of sight. Something had to be said here. The entire Heaven Marshal City was enveloped by an extremely powerful restriction. Therefore, the people outside could not fly in directly, and the people inside could not fly out directly. Once they touched that restriction, they would be attacked by the restriction. However, flying was not prohibited in Heaven Marshal City. It was fine as long as one did not fly too high and touch the restriction. In a small alley, an ordinary-looking youth slowly walked out. Now that I have an ordinary appearance, I shouldn't be troubled by others, right? Could it be that I have an aggro launcher on me? Wherever I go, aggro will follow me. This ordinary-looking youth was Murong. Because his previous appearance had attracted too much aggro, he had no choice but to change his appearance. Before the selection, he did not want any more trouble to find him. Even if he was not afraid, he was still annoyed. Fortunately, Murongyu did not have an aggro launcher on him. After changing his appearance, he was much more low-key. In the following period, he did not encounter any trouble. However, the trouble from his previous appearance did not stop. First, Murongyu consecutively killed 3 of the Yun family's younger generation disciples. Young Master Yun was fine. He was a big idiot. However, Young Master Yun and Young Master Yun were the most outstanding disciples of the Yun family's younger generation. However, they both died in Murongyu's hands. This caused the Yun family to fly into a rage. As a result, the Yun family placed a bounty on Murongyu's head in the entire Heaven Martial City. The price was extremely high. This caused many people to eye him covetously. However, Murongyu seemed to have disappeared into thin air. No matter how hard they searched, they could not find him. Aside from the Yun family, the 36 piles of trash were also searching for Murongyu with all their might. In fact, the strongest of the 36, Tian Kuei Z and Tian Gang Z, even said that they wanted Murongyu to cripple his own cultivation and apologize in front of them. Otherwise, they would kill him. However, Murongyu did not care about this. The 36 did have their merits, but they were not in Murongyu's eyes. In Murongyu's eyes, they were only the 100 prospective disciples that the Sun sect needed. Time slowly passed. Very quickly, it was the first day of the Sun sect's disciple selection. On this day, Murongyu arrived at the huge plaza in the center of Heaven Martial City. At a glance, there were at least 1 billion people. And these people were all here to participate in the Sun sect's disciple selection. Choosing 100 people out of 1 billion, this ratio was really not too big of a headache. Even so, there were still many people who flocked over. Outside the plaza, there were even more people who came to watch the show. In truth, this election was very transparent. As long as one was in Heaven Martial City, no matter where one was, they would be able to see the live broadcast of the selection. Whoosh! When the time came, several figures appeared out of thin air on a high platform in front of the plaza. Murongyu looked over. Aside from the 6 ancestors, he did not recognize anyone else. However, there were 3 people who surpassed the crowd and stood in front of the 6 ancestors. These were the experts of the Sun sect. Although all of them had concealed their auras, an invisible force was constantly emitted from their bodies, suppressing the entire plaza. Even the souls of all the cultivators in Heaven Martial City trembled. The 6 ancestors of the 6 great powers of Heaven Martial City followed behind them respectfully. The reason why they were able to make such a move was not only because these people were experts of the Sun sect, but also because they were all manifestation realm experts. 3 powerful blessed realm warriors. A single manifestation realm ancestor could sweep through the entire Heaven Martial world. What more 3? No wonder the 6 ancestors did not even dare to breathe loudly. My surname is Wang, and I am an elder of the Sun sect. I will be in charge of your selection. The leader of the 3, an old man with a kind face, took a step forward and said in a deep voice. Everyone couldn't help but look at it with excitement. Their faces were filled with excitement. They were all curious about how the solar system selected disciples. Elder Wang did not waste any time. With a wave of his hand, a pagoda-shaped yuan tool shot out and rapidly enlarged. In the blink of an eye, it was as big as a mountain, soaring into the sky. A manifestation realm yuan tool, and a top-notch one at that. Murongyu's pupils shrank. This pagoda is called the Heaven-Reaching Pagoda, a manifestation realm yuan tool. It is a replica of the Sun sect's core yuan tool. The first stage of the selection is to climb the stairway to heaven, Elder Wang said calmly, but his words stunned almost everyone present. A manifestation realm yuan tool, and a replica at that. Then what level was the real heaven-reaching pagoda? Chapter 1901. Buzz. The Tower of Babel shook slightly. In the next moment, a flight of stairs appeared in front of everyone, leading to the top of the 9 levels of heaven. Ascending the stairway to heaven, Murongyu looked over with an inexplicable smile on his face. In the cultivation world, one had to ascend the stairway to heaven to become an immortal. However, there was a huge difference between the stairway to heaven and the one created by the Tower of Babel back then. There are a total of 3,000 steps on the stairway to heaven. As long as you reach the 1,000th step, you will pass the first round of selection. Furthermore, the champion will be able to obtain a great prize. If you manage to reach the top, you will be able to obtain a special great gift. Elder Wang's voice slowly rang out. It was incomparably clear as it resounded throughout the entire Heaven Martial City. Instantly, the faces of those who were preparing to participate turned red. They were excited. If even a Creation Realm powerhouse said that it was a great gift, then it must be at least Creation Realm, right? Even Murong Yu's interest was piqued. Perhaps the Solar Sect's great gift could help him increase his cultivation by a few small realms? The stairway to heaven tests your endurance and perseverance. With every step up, the gravity will double. Elder Wang waved his hand as he spoke. In the next moment, a sky full of black shadows shot toward everyone in the square. Murong Yu extended his hand to grab it and discovered that it was a blank jade strip. Input your soul aura. This jade slip will be your identity token. In the later trials, if you feel that you have reached your limit and can't continue, you can crush this jade slip. The jade slip can protect your life and teleport you to the square. However, when you crush the jade slip, you can't become a disciple of the Solar Sect. Now the trial begins. Without any hesitation, Murong Yu injected his soul aura into the jade slip. Just as he injected his soul into the jade slip, his heart skipped a beat. Vaguely, he seemed to have a faint connection with the Tower of Babel. Presumably, these jade slips were directly connected to the Tower of Babel. Once they crushed the jade slip, the Tower of Babel would teleport them out. The Tower of Babel was most likely a spatial treasure. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After doing all this, almost all the people around Murong Yu had disappeared. They all rushed to the bottom of the heaven stairway. Some people had even started to climb the heaven stairway. It was as if the earlier they entered, the earlier they could advance. The stairway to heaven has started. I wonder who will stand out. The gigantic stairway to heaven appeared in every corner of the Heaven Martial City, and anyone could see it. Murong Yu smiled faintly and stepped forward. When he appeared again, he was already at the bottom of the stairway to heaven. The stairway to heaven was very big, so it did not feel crowded even if it accommodated billions of Chaos Realm cultivators. Murong Yu didn't hesitate to step onto the first step as he looked at the stairway that led straight to the heavens. Boom! Just as Murong Yu stepped onto the platform, an incomparably terrifying power appeared out of thin air and directly smashed onto his body. Murong Yu acted as if nothing had happened, but a trace of surprise flashed past the depths of his eyes. This power, which was the gravity of the stairway to heaven, was acting on every part of his body. Even his internal organs, flesh, blood, and bones were filled with this gravity. This gravity is probably equivalent to the endurance of an ordinary stage 1 Chaos Realm cultivator. Murong Yu thought to himself as he stepped onto the second step of the stairway to heaven. The gravity that was even more terrifying than the first step instantly pressed down. Of course, this had no effect on Murong Yu's physical body. With Murong Yu's invincible strength in the Chaos Realm, this gravity was a piece of cake. However, Murong Yu guessed that this was already the limit of many Stage 1 Chaos Realm cultivators. Even a more powerful Stage 1 Chaos Realm cultivators couldn't withstand 10 steps of the stairway to heaven. This was because the gravity doubled with every step. Sure enough, when Murong Yu stepped onto the second step of the stairway to heaven, the jade slip in his hand was already flickering with white light. At the same time, a cold voice kept ringing in his ears. Li Ping has been eliminated. Chun Sheng has been eliminated. When inputting the soul aura into the jade slip, one had to input their identity information. This was because once they passed the selection and became a disciple of the Sun Sect, the jade slip would be equivalent to their identity token. Not only did Murong Yu input his soul aura and name, but he also restored his original appearance. He was absolutely not afraid of the 6 patriarchs attacking him here, unless they dared to offend the Sun Sect's powerhouses. Morongyu shook his head. These people who were quickly eliminated were not only Stage 1 Chaos Realm cultivators, but also some cultivators of higher realms. However, these people didn't walk up step by step. Instead, they used their movement techniques and rushed up directly. With their speed, they could cross dozens of steps in an instant. It wouldn't be a problem for them to cross over 100 steps. However, the biggest problem wasn't the process, but the result. When they crossed 100 steps in an instant, how strong would the gravity be? Every step they crossed would double the gravity of the previous step. The gravity was extremely terrifying. Therefore, those who had ordinary strength but rushed up quickly were almost crushed to death by the terrifying gravity before they could even feel proud. Their physical bodies were directly crushed into a pile of mud. In the end, they still crushed the Jade Slip and left the heaven-reaching tower, losing the qualification to compete for the Sun Sect's disciple position. When a large number of such people were eliminated, the remaining people learned their lesson and stopped moving forward quickly. Instead, after each step, they familiarized themselves with the gravity of the step and continued to move up. Anyway, the Sun Sect didn't limit the time they could take to climb the heaven-reaching tower. However, even so, a large number of people were still eliminated in an instant. There were too many people participating in the selection, and too many of them were second-rate. These people would be eliminated sooner or later. Those who could reach the top were at least high-level Chaos Realm powerhouses. As Morongyu felt the constant gravitational force acting on his body, he continued to stride forward, step by step, without stopping at all. This kid is simply courting death. Does he think he is the 6 heavenly kings? When Morongyu passed by some struggling cultivators, those people sneered in disdain. Now, except for the 6 heavenly kings, the top 8 of the 4th district, the 36 Sky Martial disciples, and a small number of other powerhouses who did not stop at all and continued to move up step by step, the others seemed to be stopping 3 times at a time. However, the 6 heavenly kings were very powerful. The weakest of them was at level 9 Chaotic Space Realm. However, Morongyu was only at level 3 Chaotic Space Realm. How could he be the same as the 6 heavenly kings? Wasn't this showing off? Therefore, many people were very disdainful. There were even some who wanted to kick Morongyu off the stage. However, they did not dare to do so. Attacking was absolutely forbidden while climbing the heaven-reaching tower. Otherwise, they would be eliminated. The elimination continued. At this time, in addition to the people climbing the heaven-reaching tower, the crowd also saw a ranking list. Wow, the Sea Heavenly King is indeed the leader of the 6 Heavenly Kings. He is the first to pass the 500th step. Just as Morongyu was still climbing dozens of steps, the Sea Heavenly King, one of the 6 Heavenly Kings, had already rushed to the 500th step. This caused an uproar among the crowd. The other Heavenly Kings are also not bad. However, they are still inferior to the Sea Heavenly King. The Ice Heavenly King has also rushed to the 500th step and is ranked second. He is only 1 step away from the Sea Heavenly King. The first 6 ranks have already been occupied by the 6 Heavenly Kings. Below the 6 Heavenly Kings are the top 8 of District 4. The top 8 of District 4 are not bad. All of them have rushed to the top 15. It is necessary for them to appear. However, they are still inferior to the 6 Heavenly Kings. Only Tian Queasy is ranked 15th among the 36 candidates of the Qianwu Kingdom. The others are relatively weak. Tian Xiaozi is ranked 50th. These 50 people are the strongest Chaotic Space Realm people in our Tianwu world. It is impossible for the others to surpass their ranking. It seems that the others can only fight for the top 50 spots. Nearly 1 billion people fighting for the top 50 spots. It is really cruel. Everyone was discussing. No one was optimistic about the others. There was no other way. The 6 Heavenly Kings, the top 8 of District 4, and the 36 candidates of the Qianwu Kingdom shocked the entire Tianwu world. How could the others compete? Don't forget that there is still Murong Yu. Murong Yu easily defeated Tian Baozi and even Tian Kongzi and the others. How can trash like the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom compare to Murong Yu? The ones speaking were Murong Yu's fans. Murong Yu? I'm afraid that there was an expert secretly helping him. Otherwise, how could he defeat the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom? Although the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom's reputation was not very good recently, there were still many people who knew about them. Therefore, when Murong Yu's fans opened their mouths, they were drowned by the spittle of the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom's fans. Murong Yu? Where is Murong Yu? Trash like him dares to compete with the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom? He is simply courting death. The 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom's fans crazily spat, causing Murong Yu's fans to be silent. Murong Yu's fans also wanted to be arrogant and spit them to death. But Murong Yu's ranking was too terrible to look at. He was actually in the back of a few hundred million. How could he compare to the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom? We believe that Murong Yu will definitely stand out. Not only will he trample the 36 candidates of the Tianwu Kingdom under his feet, even the 6 heavenly kings of the Tianwu Kingdom's top 8 are not his match. Murong Yu's fans roared ferociously, deeply believing that Murong Yu would stand out in the end. Idiot! I'm just waiting to see when Murong Yu will be transported out. The surrounding people all sneered disdainfully, all of them feeling that Murong Yu's fans were too brainless to actually believe in trash. Murong Yu, you can definitely do it. Murong Yu's fans were all red in the face, constantly cheering for Murong Yu in their hearts. However, Murong Yu's speed was still neither fast nor slow, causing them to feel a headache just watching. Chapter 1902. Murong Yu continued to climb the stairway at a leisurely pace. Rankings meant nothing to him. He only focused on sensing the gravity pressing down on his body. The Sun Sect must have recruited people with excellent aptitudes and perseverance. If that's the case, Elder Wang, who is in the creation realm, only needs to release a billionth of his power to determine who is stronger. Why do they still need to climb the stairway? Could it be that the Sun Sect is not just recruiting disciples? After pondering for a while, Murong Yu was suddenly attracted by the changes in his body. His body had reached the rebirth realm. After reaching that level, it was extremely difficult for Murong Yu to find ways to improve his body strength, unless he could find more things that contained immense power and refine them. But now he realized that his physical body was stronger than before after only walking a few dozen steps. Tempering the body? A thought flashed through Murong Yu's mind. The stairway not only eliminated a portion of the participants, but also left behind some strong and determined people. It also had the ability to temper the body? Yes, that must be it. Even if I can't enter the next test, if I can temper my body and make myself stronger, this trip will not be in vain. The Sun Sect must have this idea. It's funny that those people only know how to climb the stairway, but don't understand the logic behind it. If I can't break through my body, why don't I use this opportunity to rush to the chaotic void realm? Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He looked up at the stairway that had no end. The gravity here is still too weak. I have to go to a higher level. As he pondered, Murong Yu took a step forward. Swoosh! With a single step, he crossed 100 steps and was close to 200 steps. As Murong Yu made a big leap, his ranking also skyrocketed. In an instant, he advanced by a few hundred million and rushed into the 100 million range. His ranking was around 80 million. Haha! Murong Yu is starting to show his power. He's going to ruthlessly trample the Sky Marshal 36 children under his feet. Murong Yu's fans have been paying attention to Murong Yu's ranking. At this time, seeing his ranking skyrocket, each and every one of them became excited. He crossed 100 stairs in one go. He was simply courting death. I'm looking forward to him crushing the Jade Slip. The fans of the Heavenly Marshal 36 sneered in disdain, attacking Murong Yu's fans. Whoosh! However, before anyone could react, Murong Yu took another step forward. Another 100 steps of the stairway to heaven were crossed by him. At this moment, he was already close to the 300th step of the stairway to heaven. His ranking went from 80 million to 1 million. More than 900,000. Ha ha ha. Murong Yu's fans burst into laughter. One by one, they shouted Murong Yu's name. Murong Yu and that little bastard also came to participate in the selection. Murong Yu's skyrocketing ranking finally attracted the attention of the Sky Marshal 36 sages. The Sky Marshal 36 sages were the same breath and branch. Their hatred for Murong Yu had reached an extremely high level. In addition, they had been unable to find Murong Yu these past few days. This caused them to have a bellyful of anger. He's just overestimating himself. Tian Kuei-Zi's eyes flashed with disdain. No matter how strong Murong Yu was, he was far from being able to compare to him. He's just playing to the gallery. The majority of the Sky Marshal 36 sages disdained Murong Yu. Aside from them, whether it was the top 8 of the 4th district or the 6 heavenly kings, they did not even pay attention to Murong Yu. In their eyes, Murong Yu was just a slightly stronger ant. An ant would always be an ant. He was not on the same level as them. He was not worthy of their attention. They only paid attention to Sun Sec's Elder Wang. Murong Yu was even less worthy of their attention. In fact, they did not even place the 6 heavenly kings in their eyes. Only the eyes of the 6 heavenly kings flashed. 6 pairs of eyes pierced through the layers of space and landed on Murong Yu, who is currently climbing the stairway. So it's that little bastard. He still dares to appear here. He's simply courting death. The 6 half-step creation realm ancestors were filled with killing intent. They wanted nothing more than to kill Murong Yu right now. However, even if they were given the courage of the heavens, they would not dare to make a move here. Thus, they could only wait until Murong Yu was eliminated before killing him. However, the 6 ancestors knew that Murong Yu's strength was much higher than their cultivation. It was practically impossible for them to defeat him. At the very least, it was impossible in the first stage. We can only kill him in the later stages of the selection. The 6 heavenly kings looked at each other and discovered the terrifying killing intent hidden in the depths of each other's eyes. 300 steps? The gravity here is barely enough to temper my current body. Now, I'll temper my body here. Feeling the immense gravity, Murong Yu nodded slightly. Then, he stood still and began to use the gravity to temper his body. Murong Yu was stagnant, but the others were trying their best to move forward. Therefore, as time passed, Murong Yu's ranking gradually fell. 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. In fact, after half a day, Murong Yu's ranking was already below 10 million. This made his fans rather depressed. However, the fans of the 36 heavenly kings and the others began to mock and ridicule him. Haha, I'm afraid this is the end of Murong Yu. He still wants to suppress the 36 heavenly kings. He's overestimating himself. Trash will always be trash. Does he think that he can become a genius just because he jumped around? Murong Yu's fans were extremely angry, and some people began to quarrel with him. However, most people knew that it was meaningless. These people needed to be slapped in the face. And all of this required Murong Yu to move forward. His ranking continued to fall, and soon, it fell below 50 million. At this moment, the fans of the 36 heavenly kings were even more disdainful. Even the 36 heavenly kings were filled with disdain. This kind of person defeated Tian Kongzi and the others? Could it be that there was really an expert behind Murong Yu secretly making a move? Murong Yu, who originally had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes when his ranking fell to 60 million. A mid-level rebirth state body? This effect is simply too good. Murong Yu was pleasantly surprised. Then, he looked at his ranking and could not help but feel depressed. However, after feeling depressed, a strange smile appeared on his face. Boom! Murong Yu stepped on the ground and then soared into the sky. In the next instant, he appeared at the 700th step of the stairway. Rumble! The terrifying gravity crazily pressed down, and Murong Yu's body only trembled slightly. Then, he stood still on the spot as if nothing had happened. However, there was a huge change in the ranking at this moment. First place, Morong-yu. Morong-yu actually rushed to first place? What was going on? Could that guy be Morong-yu? In an instant, everyone was stunned. Originally, See Heavenly King was far ahead, but he only reached the 650th step of the stairway. However, Morong-yu jumped and pulled away from See Heavenly King, stepping on him. After the shock, the entire Heaven Martial City was in an uproar. In an instant, everyone's eyes were on Morong-yu, who had stepped onto the 700th step of the stairway. Ha ha ha! Morong-yu's fans laughed loudly. They felt very relieved. First place. Among the 36 Heavenly Kings, who can enter first place? Ha! See Heavenly King, who was gradually climbing the stairway, had a dark expression. In his eyes, his opponents were only the other 5 of the 6 Heavenly Kings, and those 5 people were still under his feet. However, just now, he wanted to see if there were any changes in the rankings of his opponents. Then, he saw that his ranking had changed. He was in second place, and the first place was a completely unfamiliar name. Rank 3 Chaotic Void Realm? When he raised his head to look at Morong-yu, he could not help but exclaim. At the same time, the other 5 Heavenly Kings' eyes were filled with shock. As for the top 8 of the 4th district, they looked as if they had seen a ghost. Plop! The bodies of the 36 sages of the Sky Martial Realm swayed, and they all fell from the sky stairway. Fortunately, they were strong enough to stabilize their bodies. Otherwise, if they fell together, they would have lost their teeth. 700 steps. Is this kid's strength that terrifying? The 36 Heavenly Kings were shocked. At that moment, they had just crossed the 500th step of the stairway. In the distance, the faces of the 6 half-step creation realm ancestors turned extremely ugly. The more Morong-yu was in the limelight, the harder it would be for them to kill him. Especially if he attracted the attention of the Sun Sex elders, it would be difficult for them to kill him. When they thought of this, they were all shocked. Thus, they looked at Elder Wong. Then their hearts sank. They happened to see Elder Wong looking at Morong-yu. Elder Wong's eyes revealed a meaningful look. The 6 Heavenly Kings had a bad feeling in their hearts. Who is this? How dare you surpass me? I must ruthlessly trample you under my feet and never let you rise again. The Sea Heavenly King roared madly in his heart, and a ferocious look appeared on his face. At the same time, he quickened his pace and rushed up quickly. He must trample Morong-yu. Like the Sea Heavenly King, the other 5 Heavenly Kings also sped up, and so did the top 8 of the 4th district. They did not want to be trampled by a nobody. However, Morong-yu's sudden promotion to first place made many people recognize him. It also made his fans recognize him again. Although Morong-yu's face was different from before, it did not matter as long as he was the same person. Perhaps this was his true face. After making a small show of himself, Morong-yu calmed down again and guided the gravity of the stairway to refine his body again. He had a feeling that his body was very likely to advance today. Chapter 1903. Under Morong-yu's provocation, the true experts erupted and no longer held back their strength. They all sped up and climbed quickly. Very soon, the gap between them gradually widened, and even widened more and more. In a short time, they were automatically divided into 4 levels. The 6 Heavenly Kings, led by the Sea Heavenly King, naturally became the first level. The 6 Heavenly Kings were among the strongest chaotic realm experts in the Tianwu world. Moreover, although the Sea Heavenly King was the leader of the 6 Heavenly Kings, their strength was about the same. He was only slightly stronger than the others. Therefore, after everyone unleashed their strength, the Sea Heavenly King did not widen the gap between him and the 5 Heavenly Kings. The 6 Heavenly Kings climbed quickly, but only widened the gap between them and the experts in the second level. The second level was the top 8 of District 4. They were the strongest chaotic realm experts in the Tianwu world other than the 6 Heavenly Kings. Originally, the top 8 of District 4 were not convinced that the 6 Heavenly Kings were stronger than them. But soon, They realized the gap between them and the 6 heavenly kings. They also advanced quickly, but the gap between them and the 6 heavenly kings grew wider and wider. However, although they were not as strong as the 6 heavenly kings, they could already kill the 36 disciples of the Tianwu world. At this time, the strongest of the 36 disciples of the Tianwu world, Tian Kuizi, was far behind the top 8 of District 4. The gap was widening. However, although the 36 disciples of the Tianwu world were not as strong as the 6 heavenly kings and the top 8 of District 4, however, they were much stronger than ordinary Chaos Realm cultivators. The gap between them and the people behind them grew wider and wider. Naturally, the cultivators behind them formed the 4th level. As for Morongyu, he stopped steadily on the 700th step of the stairway to heaven. He closed his eyes again and remained motionless. Whoosh! The Sea Heavenly King was the first cultivator to reach the 700th step after Morongyu. Ant, although you're very good at jumping around, you're still an ant in the end. In this life, you only deserve to be under my feet and never be able to rise again. The Sea Heavenly King looked at Morongyu and sneered. Morongyu abruptly opened his eyes, a trace of doubt appearing within them. He was really confused. When did he offend the 6 heavenly kings? He had only stepped on 36 piles of trash in the Tianwu continent. Could it be that the Sea Heavenly King wanted to vent his anger on behalf of the 36 heavenly martial science? Seeing Morongyu looking over, Sea Sky King's eyes exploded with a terrifying murderous intent. He wished he could slap Morongyu to death. But in the end, he still didn't dare. Morongyu was speechless when he saw the deep hatred in Sea Sky King's eyes. Wasn't he being attacked, even when he was lying down? However, he had already reacted. He knew why Sea Heavenly King had such a bitter expression on his face. Because Morongyu had stolen his limelight, this guy was jealous of Morongyu. Although it was just jealousy, small jealousy could evolve in a monstrous hatred in some narrow-minded people. In fact, they were absolutely irreconcilable. And it was obvious that Sea Heavenly King was such a person. Morongyu was originally disdainful of such people. However, didn't the Sea Heavenly King want to step on him? Do you want me to never be able to make a comeback? Since that was the case, I'll just return the same words back to him. Thus, Morongyu grinned at Sea Heavenly King. Sea Heavenly King suddenly had a bad feeling. Before he could react, he already saw Morongyu soaring into the sky. Bang! Under Sea Heavenly King's desperate gaze, Morongyu directly crossed the 300th step and stood on the 1000th step. Morongyu has successfully stepped onto the 1000th step of the celestial stairway, becoming the first person to advance. A cold and emotionless voice rang out in the entire Tianwu city when Morongyu landed on the 1000th step of the celestial stairway. Boom! This sentence was like a huge rock being thrown into a calm lake. It immediately caused the entire lake to churn. The first person was actually Morongyu. Morongyu was actually the first to advance. It was not Sea Heavenly King, nor any of the 6 heavenly kings, but a stranger. Most importantly, this person seemed to be only at level 3 Chaotic Void Realm. A level 3 Chaotic Void Realm expert could trample the 6 heavenly kings and others to death. This was shocking and unbelievable. When Morongyu appeared, Sea Heavenly King, who ranked the best among the 6 heavenly kings, was only at the 700th step of the celestial stairway in a daze. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire Tianwu city was in an uproar. Countless people's eyes were focused on the black-robed Morongyu. This ordinary-looking young man was actually so powerful. The 6 heavenly kings, the top 8 of District 4, and the 36 disciples of the Tianwu kingdom were all stunned. They all looked at Morongyu in disbelief and even forgot to continue climbing. In the distance, the faces of the 6 creation realm ancestors were extremely ugly. This was because just now, they clearly noticed that Elder Wong from the Sun Sect looked at Morongyu with a hint of praise in his eyes. It was obvious that Morongyu had attracted the attention of this powerful elder. If he continued to be in the limelight, it would be difficult for them to kill Morongyu. Morongyu! Morongyu! Murong-yu. In the square, Murong-yu's fans roared crazily. In the beginning, only a limited number of people were shouting, but later on, more and more people started shouting. People had always worshipped the strong. Moreover, with the promotion of Murong-yu's fans, the news of him easily defeating the 36 disciples of the Tianwu kingdom spread far and wide. In addition, Murong-yu had surpassed the 6 heavenly kings and was the first to appear. This earned him even more fans. As for the fans of the 36 disciples of the Tianwu kingdom, they were all mute. They did not need to say anything. Murong-yu had used reality to give him a hard slap in the face. In front of Murong-yu, the 36 disciples of the Tianwu kingdom were the 36 piles of trash in the Tianwu kingdom. This unknown junior is actually the first one to pass the test. I wonder if he will continue to climb? A few bright world realm ancestors communicated with each other. As the first to qualify, Murong-yu already had the qualifications for them to pay attention to him. In fact, in Tianwu City, the majority of the people who were paying attention to the selection were focused on him. As for the 6 heavenly kings and the top 8 of District 4, there were fewer and fewer gazes. Almost all of the limelight had been stolen by Murong-yu. "Aunt, you will die without a doubt." See, Heavenly King's expression was extremely gloomy. He cursed Murong-yu in his heart and continued to climb. Now, he still had a chance to take back the limelight that originally belonged to him. As long as he did not immediately leave Sky Tower after reaching level 1000 and continued to climb, he would definitely be able to trample Murong-yu under his feet. District 4's top 8, the 36 disciples of the Tianwu kingdom, did not speak and continued to climb. Although the gravity here is not bad, it is still a bit weak. It's too slow to upgrade my physical body. Murong-yu raised his head to look at the stairway to heaven and took another step forward. If the gravity of the sky stairway could not be used to temper his body, Murong-yu would definitely not be so extreme. That way, he would eventually reach the 1000th step, but he would definitely not be the first. Moreover, he would not continue to climb. However, if he could reach the top now, he would receive 2 great gifts. The most important thing was that the gravity here could temper his body, and the effect was surprisingly good. Therefore, Murong-yu made the best use of his time. He had to make use of the gravity to break through his body. He had to make haste because he did not know if there was a time limit to the sky stairway. He had to succeed before the time limit was up. The 1200th step. Murong-yu had jumped 200 levels in one go. At this point, the terrifying gravity was enough to annihilate any ordinary rank 9 chaotic space realm powerhouse. It was also beneficial to Murong-yu's body tempering. Therefore, Murong-yu stood still and continued tempering his body. In the distance, the 3 manifestation realm experts from the Sun sect looked at Murong-yu, who was tempering his body with glints in their eyes. Elder Wang, it seems that this Murong-yu is not bad. Among the billions of people, only he knows the use of the sky stairway. The others all boast that they are geniuses. Although their aptitudes are not bad, they are extremely stupid. The 3 powerhouses of the Sun sect communicated with each other through divine thought. Moreover, this little guy is only rank 3 chaotic space realm, but he is able to instantly kill those so-called strongest powerhouses. I am really curious. Can he reach the top in the end? Elder Wang's eyes flashed. The 3000 step is not something that a chaotic space realm junior can climb. Even a high-level bright world realm cultivator cannot climb it. However, I have a feeling that this junior might be able to create a miracle and reach the top in one go. If he can reach the top, we will have found a top genius for our sect. The other 2 laughed. The reason why the Sun sect recruited disciples from all over the solar system was to find disciples with excellent aptitudes. Elder Wang only nodded slightly and then looked away, no longer paying attention to Murong-yu. The other 2 did the same. After all, they were creation realm powerhouses with great strength. These chaotic space realm juniors could not attract their attention at all. Even Murong-yu had only given them the right to pay attention to him. Unless Murong-yu could reach the top, they would not pay attention to him. As for the others, They were not even interested in looking at them. As the number one sect in the solar system, anyone from the Sun sect was more monstrous than these people and more talented than them. Seeing Murong, you crossed the 200th step of the sky stairway. See Heavenly King, who was following closely behind, almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Moreover, he was narrow-minded. The greater the gap between him and Murong Yu, the greater his resentment toward Murong Yu. However, this was nothing to Murong Yu. If See Heavenly King came looking for trouble, he would not mind killing him with one punch. He was not even afraid of Patriarch Tianhai, let alone a mere chaotic space realm junior. Chapter 1904. On the 1,200 steps, Murong Yu's feet stunned most of the people in Heaven Marshal City. He even made See Heavenly King spit out blood. However, Murong Yu did not have time to enjoy the sensation he caused. He had once again entered the state of tempering his body. Little bastard, first place is still mine. You're just an ant. See Heavenly King's face was gloomy as he cursed in his heart. He sped up again. The other 5 Heavenly Kings, the top 8 of District 4, and the 36 Scions of Heaven Marshal City all tried their best to catch up. They were all confident that they could cross the 1,200 steps. However, Murong Yu was one step ahead of them. They all believed that they would eventually trample Murong Yu under their feet. This was especially true for See Heavenly King and the 36 Scions of Heaven Marshal City. See Heavenly King did not appear. Instead, he chose to continue climbing like Murong Yu. However, he wasn't like Murong Yu, who had jumped several hundred steps in a single leap. That was because the span was too large. He would have to bear an extremely terrifying gravity all of a sudden, which would have a detrimental effect on the later steps. Therefore, See Heavenly King and the others climbed step by step. However, their speed was also extremely fast. The gap between them and ordinary chaotic void realm cultivators was widening. During this process, there were even some people who imitated Murong Yu and jumped a few hundred steps in one go. This undoubtedly caused their rankings to soar instantly. However, the price was also extremely terrifying. Most of the people who followed Murong Yu's example had their bodies crushed by the terrifying gravity the moment they landed on the stairway. There were even powerful level 9 chaotic void realm existences among them. If it were not for the fact that they were in the heaven-reaching tower, which teleported them out after their bodies were crushed and did not crush their souls, these people would have stayed on the stairway forever. However, even so, they would forever stop at their current rankings and the stairway. At least this time, they were not fated to become disciples of the Sun sect. After Murong Yu and the See Heavenly King, the remaining 5 Heavenly Kings, the top 8 of the 4 regions, and the Sky Marshal Kingdom's 36 children all passed the level 1,000 barrier, but all of them chose to continue. Not long after them, people began to appear on the 1,000th step of the stairway to heaven. Most of these people chose to give up on climbing the stairway to heaven. This was because after reaching the 1,000th step of the stairway, they had already qualified. To them, there was no point in continuing to climb. He might as well conserve his energy and prepare for the next election. In the distance, Elder Wang's expression was somewhat gloomy. He was somewhat disappointed at the cultivators who still had the energy to continue climbing but chose to give up. Most of the people in this world are still idiots. A man behind Elder Wang shook his head and said, his eyes full of disdain. The other person didn't say anything and just nodded in agreement. These people did not know the true meaning of climbing the stairway to heaven. The true meaning of this was to temper the body. As they spoke, their gazes landed on Murong Yu, who was currently guiding the gravity to temper his body, and a faint smile appeared on their faces. Murong Yu was the only one who understood the true meaning of climbing the stairway to heaven. The others, including the 6 Heavenly Kings, only knew how to climb the stairway to heaven and chase after their rankings. They had forgotten the most fundamental thing. I'm really looking forward to this, kid. The man who spoke earlier laughed. The other person narrowed his eyes slightly. This kid's body is rapidly strengthening. He has already reached the peak of the rebirth realm and is only one step away from the bright world realm. Once he reaches the chaotic world realm, he will be invincible in the same realm just by relying on his physical strength. If his physical body breaks through to the chaotic world realm, he will definitely be invincible in the chaotic world realm, the man said faintly. However, what he didn't know was that Murong-yu is already invincible in the chaotic world realm. This kid is definitely beyond your expectations, Elder Wong suddenly said, his tone full of praise. The two people were shocked. Elder Wong's status in the Sun sect was extraordinary. Usually, he would even look at experts of the same realm with disdain. Now, he was actually praising Murong-yu, a stage 3 chaotic world realm cultivator. Elder Wong smiled slightly, as if he knew something. However, he didn't say anything. The two people couldn't help but look at each other. They saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Murong-yu moved again. He jumped another 300 steps in a row and has reached the 1,500th step of the stairway to heaven. Oh heavens! Murong-yu's performance has made the 6 heavenly kings speechless. Look, he jumped again. He has reached the 2,000th step of the stairway to heaven. He is simply riding on top of the 6 heavenly kings. Murong-yu is definitely the number 1 in the chaotic world realm. The entire square, and even the entire Heaven Marshal City, went crazy. They went crazy because of Murong-yu. However, Murong-yu's opponents were all black as charcoal. They were very unwilling to accept this. The 6 heavenly kings were especially depressed. They wanted to vomit blood. This little bastard is in the limelight. Patriarch Tianhai sent a divine thought to Patriarch Xianbing and the others. The 5 patriarchs' faces were also dark. It was obvious that they were very unhappy. This was because Murong-yu was their sworn enemy. He had snatched the heavens' Inquisition God Vine and Devil's Vine that originally belonged to them. Moreover, he had stolen the limelight from their disciples. This made them very angry and filled with murderous intent. Only one step left. This pressure is not enough. Standing on the 2,500th step, Murong-yu roared in his heart. At this moment, his physical body had reached the peak of the rebirth realm. He was only one step away from breaking through. However, he couldn't break through this step. The gravity was still not strong enough to break through the barrier of this realm. It also couldn't make Murong-yu's physical body undergo a qualitative change. Therefore, he continued to fly up. 2,600, 2,700, 2,800. In the end, Murong-yu reached the 2,999th step in one go. Seeing Murong-yu standing on the 2,999th step, the Ocean Sky King, who was following closely behind him, let out a furious roar. Although he was following closely behind Murong-yu, the truth was that he had only just stepped onto the 2,000th step. There was a gap of 999 steps between him and Murong-yu. However, the difference in gravity wasn't just 999 times, it was more than 10 million times, or even more. I can't accept this. The first place is mine. See, Heavenly King roared madly in his heart and rushed up quickly. However, he was getting slower and slower. In the end, he couldn't even step onto a step for half a day. Boom! See, Heavenly King's body exploded with an extremely powerful aura. Rays of blinding light shot up into the sky. After unleashing his ultimate power, See, Heavenly King finally took another step and stepped onto the 2,500th step of the stairway to heaven. Bang! However, before See, Heavenly King could stand firm, the light on his body exploded with a bang. Then, the powerful aura that erupted from his body seemed to be squeezed by a giant hand. It didn't take long for it to be annihilated. When See, Heavenly King's powerful aura was annihilated, See, Heavenly King's journey on the stairway to heaven finally came to an end. Bang! After a loud explosion, See, Heavenly King's body was directly crushed by the incomparably powerful gravity. With his body crushed, See, Heavenly King's soul was immediately sent off the stairway to heaven. His stairway to heaven stopped at the 2,500th step. He became the second highest cultivator after Murongyu. I can't accept this. After Sea Heavenly King was sent off the stairway to heaven, he immediately recovered his body. He was stunned for a moment, then let out an earth-shattering roar. Embarrassing guy. Tian High Ancestor's face was gloomy. He slapped Sea Heavenly King away. Ancestor. Sea Heavenly King finally woke up and bowed respectfully to Tian High Ancestor. You're not as good as Murongyu in this round because your body isn't strong enough, Sea Heavenly Ancestor said lightly. Sea Heavenly King's face darkened, but Tian High Ancestor's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Murongyu's strength is definitely not as good as yours. In the next round of selection, find a chance to kill him for me. Sea Heavenly King was overjoyed when he heard that. He immediately sat down cross-legged and coldly looked at Murongyu, who was still refining his body. So what if his body was strong? He could destroy it with one punch. Murongyu would definitely die. The selection continued and wouldn't stop because of Sea Heavenly King's advancement. The cold voice of Tong Tian Tower continued to resound throughout Heaven Marshall City. In the end, the majority of people were eliminated. However, there were still some people who made it. 10 days later, aside from Murongyu, who was still standing on the 2,999th step, there was no one else on the stairway to heaven. Although Murongyu hadn't moved for a few days, he was still in first place. The second place was Sea Heavenly King. As for Ice Heavenly King and the others, they followed closely behind Sea Heavenly King, all of them reaching the 2,400 step. The top 8 in District 4 were relatively weak, but the strongest had reached the 2,300 step, while the weakest had reached the 2,200 step. As for Tianwu's 36 scions, they were even weaker, but most of them had surpassed the 2,200 step. The strongest had reached the 2,100th step. The people behind Tianwu's 36 scions were more ordinary. There were many who could reach the 1,500th step. There were definitely less than 10,000 people who could surpass the 1,000th step. So far, there were already 100,000 people who had successfully reached the 1,000th step. Of course, there was no lack of dark horses in this world. There were a few unknown cultivators who had surpassed most of the 36 scions. There was even one person who was only in District 4's top 8, surpassing the strongest of the 36 scions, Tian Queasy. The appearance of these dark horses dealt a heavy blow to the 36 scions, especially the high and mighty Murongyu, who made the 36 scions lose their temper. However, Murongyu didn't care about any of this, because he was about to break through. On this day, Murongyu's body suddenly trembled. At this moment, his physical body finally made a breakthrough, reaching the chaotic realm in one fell swoop. Chapter 1905. An incomparably powerful feeling rapidly surged from the bottom of Murongyu's heart. Sensing this incomparably powerful aura, Murongyu couldn't help but let out a long howl. What was powerful? It was powerful now. Before his physical body had broken through, Murongyu was already invincible in the same realm as him. He was invincible in the chaotic realm. However, when he encountered a bright world realm ancestor, he was still helpless. At most, he could only rely on his terrifying speed to escape. He could not even block a single move. However, it was different now. Murongyu had a feeling. Now, he could directly contend with a bright world realm first-order ancestor, and he could even easily kill one. Murongyu's realm and strength did not increase greatly. It was only his physical body that had broken through. Moreover, he was only in the chaotic realm. How did his battle strength become so powerful? It even gave him the terrifying ability to kill an enemy who was a whole realm higher. In fact, this was normal. If Murongyu's battle strength was compared to a long sword, then his original physical body was equivalent to a child. A child holding this sword could easily kill a child of the same level. However, he could not kill a strong man who was much stronger than him. However, if a strong man held this sword, He could easily kill a strong man of the same level as him. Unfortunately, Murong Yu's soul was still stuck at the Sector Lord level. If he could break through to the Rebirth Realm, or even the Chaotic Realm, Murong Yu was confident that he could contend with a mid-level Bright World Realm Ancestor or even a high-level Bright World Realm Ancestor. He broke through. Although Murong Yu's body only trembled slightly when he broke through, he could not hide it from the Sun Sect's Elder Wang and the 6 Great Ancestors. Elder Wang naturally revealed a smile on his face. The 6 Great Ancestors' faces darkened. It turns out that the stairway to heaven is not only a test, but also a great opportunity to temper the body. Seeing that Murong Yu had taken the opportunity to break through his physical body, the participants were enlightened. Therefore, their faces darkened. It was too late for regrets, especially the 6 Heavenly Kings. The Sea Heavenly King's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. In order to chase after Murong Yu, he did not notice this at all. If he could cultivate as well, he might be able to reach the top. This is all because of that little bastard Murong Yu. He must die. See Heavenly King's killing intense sword, and he pushed all the blame onto Murong Yu. It's time to reach the top. Murong Yu glanced at the last step of the stairway to heaven, then took a step forward and climbed up. Whoosh! Murong Yu's figure staggered and almost fell to the ground. What a scam! There's nothing? Murong Yu's face darkened. Originally, he had already raised his strength to the maximum and was prepared to face the terrifying gravity. However, when he reached the top, he realized that the 3,000 step wasn't as heavy as he had imagined. There wasn't even the slightest bit of gravity. It was as if he was standing in the Tianwu world. It was as if Murong Yu's punch had landed on empty air. If it wasn't for his powerful strength and precise control of his strength, he would have staggered and fallen to the ground, making a fool of himself in front of countless people. Who would have thought that the last step of the stairway to heaven would have no gravity? Murong Yu's face darkened as he turned to look at the 2 brocade boxes not far away. These 2 brocade boxes were his rewards. One was the reward for being the first to advance, and the other was the reward for reaching the top. With a wave of his hand, Murong Yu kept the 2 brocade boxes into the Hichu Luo Shu. At the same time, a strong force enveloped Murong Yu, making him unable to resist. Murong Yu's heart trembled. He knew that this was the effect of the Tower of Heaven. Immediately, he did not resist. As expected, in the next moment, the scenery in front of him changed. When he stepped on the ground again, he had already left the Tower of Heaven. However, Murong Yu realized that he did not appear in the square or any corner of the Tianwu city. Instead, he appeared in an independent space. This should be the space of the Tower of Heaven. With a thought, Murong Yu was relieved. This was definitely the consideration of the Sun Sect. After all, those who could pass the first trial were all elite disciples of the Tianwu world. In the future, they could become disciples of the Sun Sect, and these people would definitely have enemies in the Tianwu world. If their enemies saw that they had advanced, they would definitely spare no expense to kill them. Why was that? They were worried that after becoming a disciple of the Sun Sect, they would come back for revenge. If that happened, their power would be wiped out with a wave of the hand. It was better to take a certain risk and kill the other party now. Regarding this, Murong Yu naturally raised both hands in agreement. There were too many people in the Tianwu world who wanted to kill him. If he was not in this space, Murong Yu could only change his appearance. He didn't want trouble to come knocking on his door one after another. Moreover, the 6 old ancestors might even make a move. If that happened, it would be too tragic. Shua. After Murong Yu appeared, the surrounding people's gazes instantly penetrated his body. There was envy, worship, disdain, and even hatred. In particular, there were a few hateful gazes that made Murong Yu feel as if there was a blade on his back. He only needed a glance to know who was so hateful towards him. The 6 heavenly kings and the 36 Tianwu sages. The 36 Tianwu sages were fine. After all, Murong Yu had trampled on them before. It was normal for them to hate Murong Yu. What puzzled Murong Yu was the 6 heavenly kings, especially the Sea Sky King. This guy's hatred was simply monstrous. Murong was very puzzled. Was it because he had stolen the limelight? If that was the case, this person was too narrow-minded. He did not even know how he had cultivated to his current realm. However, although Murong wanted nothing more than to punch the Sea Sky King to death, he still restrained himself. He directly sat cross-legged on the ground and began to familiarize himself with his new strength. No one dared to approach. After all, although Murong was only at level 3 Chaotic Space Realm, his strength was unquestionable. The second round was officially held on the 10th day after Murong left the stairway to heaven. At this time, Murong also knew that as many as 100,000 people had passed the first round. And this time, there were only 3 rounds in the selection. In other words, the next 2 rounds would be even more brutal. In the end, only 100 people would really appear. The second round is still very simple. That is to break through the array formation. Those who can safely come out of the array formation and restriction and leave the heaven-reaching tower can pass, Elder Wong said lightly, then waved his hand. Shua, the 10 people, including Murong instantly disappeared from the original independent space. Rumble. Murong had just appeared when terrifying bolts of heavenly lightning fell from the sky, covering heaven and earth as they crazily struck down. Murong's face darkened. He realized that he had already entered an array formation. These bolts of heavenly lightning were naturally the result of the array formation being activated. Originally, if he had entered these array formations alone, these array formations would definitely not have been activated. Because of Murong's physique, all the array formations and restrictions in the world had no effect on him. However, he had not come in by himself. He had been teleported in. These array formations had probably been activated when he was teleported in. The rules of the challenge were very simple. One could break through the array formations and restrictions with brute force and directly destroy them before leaving the heaven-reaching tower. One could also break through these array formations and walk out of the heaven-reaching tower. The process was not important. The most important thing was to be able to successfully walk out of the heaven-reaching tower. Otherwise, it would be considered a failure. Although the heavenly lightning is frightening, its power is not great. It can only threaten high-level chaotic space realms. It's just right to use it to temper the physical body that has just broken through. Murong was overjoyed. He had been worried about how to stabilize the realm of his physical body. He did not expect that it would come so soon. It was really like someone giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. Explode for me. On the other side, Sea Sky King roared and punched out with a powerful force. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound, and the heavenly thunder array he was in was directly destroyed. Immediately, the heavenly lightning that was still raging was annihilated and disappeared without a trace. It's just a mere array formation. How can stop me? See, Heavenly King sneered and strode forward. Soon, he was greeted by the second array formation. At the same time, the others also began to break through the array formation with brute force. In the beginning, the power of the formation wasn't strong. Therefore, other than Murong, no one else stopped. One by one, they unleashed a powerful force and drove straight ahead. Everyone encountered the same array formation and the same power because they entered an independent space. Because only in this way would they not affect others. These array formations are too weak. The effect on the physical body is next to nothing. However, no matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Let's not waste it. After a few breaths of time, Murong felt that the heavenly lightning could not increase the level of his physical body. Therefore, he opened his mouth and sucked hard at the sky. Rumble, suddenly, the heavenly lightning that covered the sky was swallowed by Murong into his stomach like a torrent. Outside, countless people were shocked when they saw Murong. They all felt the power of the array formation that Murong was in. Although it was not too strong, it was too shocking to break through the array in such a way. He's just playing to the gallery, the 6 ancestors said with disdain. As for Elder Wong, he did not even open his eyes. Although Murong's method was shocking, it did not attract his attention. There's no more? Yu, who was in the middle of swallowing, suddenly stopped. This was because he realized that the space he was in was already clear and cloudless. Where was the heavenly lightning? In fact, Yu felt that the array formation he was in had already collapsed. This was because Yu had also swallowed the power that formed the array formation. Without the power to maintain it, the array formation would definitely be a tragedy. Haha, if I keep swallowing like this, all the arrays in the second stage will be devoured. Will my physical body break through to the bright world realm? Yu laughed in his heart and flew forward at full speed. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.